When the weakest Omega defied the Alpha King to his face, everyone expected her execution. What they got instead shattered a 1,000-year hierarchy. This is the story of Lyra Voss, the girl they called broken, worthless, invisible. For 21 years, she survived in silence while a brutal system crushed her beneath its boot. But when pushed to the edge, she made a choice that would ignite a war, awaken a forbidden power, and force the most dangerous man alive to kneel. Stay until the end to see how she rewrote every rule. Drop your city in the comments and smash that like button. The bucket hit the floor before Lyra did. She barely felt the impact anymore. Her knees had learned to absorb the blow, her hands to catch her weight before her face met stone. Cold water soaked through her threadbare shirt, and somewhere above her Mira's laughter cut through the kitchen like broken glass. "Clumsy bitch," Mira said, her voice dripping with practiced cruelty. "Can't even carry water without spilling it everywhere." Lyra didn't respond. Words were currency she couldn't afford to spend. She pushed herself up slowly, ignoring the fresh bruise blooming across her kneecap, and reached for the bucket. Her fingers were red and cracked from the cold, the skin split in places that had stopped healing weeks ago. "Did you hear me?" Mira stepped closer, her boot deliberately crushing Lyra's hand against the metal handle. The pain was sharp, immediate. Lyra's breath caught, but she didn't pull away. Pulling away meant resistance. Resistance meant worse things than a crushed hand. "Yes," Lyra whispered. "Yes, what?" "Yes, Beta Mira." The pressure released. Mira's boot retreated, leaving a muddy print across Lyra's knuckles. "Clean this mess up. The Alpha wants the hall scrubbed before the king arrives." Lyra nodded, keeping her eyes down. She'd learned that too. Eye contact was challenge, and challenges from Omegas were answered with fists or worse. Mira walked away, her footsteps echoing through the stone corridor, and Lyra was alone again. The way she preferred it, the way she'd survived for 21 years. She grabbed the mop from the corner and started working, her movements automatic, efficient. The Blackwood Pack compound was ancient, all rough-hewn stone and timber, built into the mountainside like a fortress. It smelled like wet fur, wood smoke, and the particular stink of too many bodies packed into too little space. The frontier packs were always like this, brutal, isolated, ruled by strength and nothing else. Lyra had been born here. She would probably die here, and in between she would scrub floors. The water in the bucket turned gray as she worked, washing away mud and blood, and gods knew what else. Her mind drifted the way it always did during these tasks, to the forest beyond the walls, to the mountains that ringed the territory, to anywhere that wasn't here. She'd tried running once. She'd been 14. They'd dragged her back within a day, and Alpha Cormac had made an example of her in front of the entire pack. She still had the scars across her back, thin white lines that burned when the weather changed. The message had been clear. Omegas didn't leave. Omegas served, especially wolfless Omegas. That was Lyra's real crime, the thing that made her less than nothing in the pack hierarchy. She'd never shifted, never felt the pull of the moon, never experienced the change that marked someone as truly pack. The healers had examined her when she was 12 and declared her broken, defective, some genetic flaw that made her human in all the ways that mattered. In a wolf pack, that was worse than being weak. It was being wrong. "Lyra!" She flinched at the sound of her name, nearly dropping the mop. Elder Greta stood in the doorway, her face pinched with its usual expression of distaste. "The Alpha wants you in the greeting hall. Now!" Lyra's stomach dropped. Alphas didn't summon Omegas unless something was wrong. "Did I? Just go." Greta's lip curled. "And for God's sake, try not to embarrass us in front of the king." The king. Alpha King Darian Crave was arriving today. Lyra had heard the whispers, the nervous energy that had infected the pack for the past week. The king didn't visit frontier territories unless he wanted something, and what he wanted was usually ugly. This time, the rumors said he was collecting Omegas. Lyra's hands trembled as she set down the mop. She wiped them on her shirt, pointless since the shirt was already filthy, and started walking. The compound was buzzing with activity, wolves rushing back and forth in various states of panic. The king's arrival had thrown everyone into chaos. The greeting hall was the largest space in the compound, a cavernous room with a high ceiling and a massive fire pit in the center. When Lyra entered, she found it packed with bodies. The entire pack seemed to be gathered, arranged in careful hierarchical clusters. Alphas and betas at the front near the fire, lower ranks toward the back, and along the far wall, a small group of omegas, all female, all young, all terrified. Lyra joined them, slipping into the back of the group. She recognized most of them. Senna, who worked in the kitchens, Kira, who tended the children, Alara, who'd been claimed by one of the senior betas but was apparently being offered anyway. They didn't look at Lyra. Nobody ever did. "Why are we here?" Senna whispered, her voice barely audible. "Inspection," Kira answered. "The king chooses and the alpha hands us over." "Chooses us for what?" Nobody answered that. They all knew. The king maintained multiple estates across the territories, each one staffed with omegas. What happened in those estates was the subject of endless speculation and very few concrete facts. What everyone agreed on was that the omegas who went in rarely came out. Lyra felt her pulse hammering in her throat. She was wolfless, broken. Surely the king wouldn't... The doors exploded inward, not literally, but the effect was the same. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees as a wave of pure presence rolled through the hall. Lyra's knees buckled, her body responding to something her mind couldn't process. This wasn't just an alpha. This was something older, darker, carved from violence and absolute authority. Alpha King Darian Crave walked into the room like he owned it, because he did. He owned this room, this compound, this entire territory, and everyone in it. He was tall, taller than any wolf Lyra had ever seen, with dark hair pulled back from a face that looked like it had been designed to inflict terror, sharp features, cold gray eyes, and a scar that ran from his temple to his jaw, bisecting his face like a warning. He wore black, simple but expensive, and moved with the fluid grace of something that had killed more times than it could count. Behind him came his guard, 6 massive warriors in formation, their eyes scanning the room for threats that didn't exist. Nobody here was stupid enough to challenge the king. Alpha Cormac stepped forward, dropping into a bow that looked like it physically hurt him. "Your Majesty, Blackwood Pack welcomes you." Darian's gaze swept the room, dismissive and thorough. "This is everyone?" "All able-bodied wolves, yes. And the Omegas?" Cormac gestured toward the wall where Lyra and the others stood. 15, as requested. Darian walked toward them, and Lyra felt every muscle in her body lock. Don't look up, don't make eye contact, don't draw attention. He moved down the line slowly, stopping in front of each Omega. Some he dismissed with a glance. Others he examined more closely, tilting their chins up, checking their teeth like livestock. Lyra watched from her peripheral vision, her heart racing. When he reached Alara, he paused. "This one's claimed." "Yes, Your Majesty," Cormac said quickly. "But if you desire, I don't take claimed Omegas." Darian's voice was flat, emotionless. "It creates complications." He moved on, closer to Lyra now, 3 Omegas away. 2. Lyra kept her eyes on the floor. She could see his boots, expensive leather reinforced with steel at the toe. Boots designed for kicking things, breaking things. 1 Omega away. Lyra's breath came in shallow gasps. Her vision was tunneling, panic clawing at her chest. She was going to pass out. Right here, in front of the king. She was going to... He stopped in front of her. Silence stretched. Lyra could hear her own heartbeat, could feel the weight of his attention like a physical pressure. "You." The word wasn't loud, but it cut through the room. Lyra's knees shook. "Look at me." She couldn't. If she looked up, if she met his eyes, something terrible would happen. She knew it the way prey knows the shape of predators in the dark. "I said, look at me." His hand shot out, gripping her chin and forcing her head up. His fingers were cold, his grip iron. Lyra's eyes met his, and the world lurched. Gray eyes, empty of everything except calculation. She was an equation to him, a problem to solve or discard. He studied her face for a long moment. Lyra tried not to breathe, tried not to exist. "This one's damaged," he said finally, his tone clinical. "She's wolfless, Your Majesty," Cormac supplied quickly. "But she's obedient, a hard worker." "I didn't ask for a sales pitch." Darian's grip tightened fractionally. "Why would I want a broken Omega?" Something ignited in Lyra's chest. It was small, barely a spark, but it burned. Broken. That word. She'd heard it her entire life, had it carved into her identity until she'd almost believed it herself. But standing here with this man's hand on her face and his empty eyes judging her worth, something inside her snapped. "I'm not broken." The words came out before she could stop them. Quiet, but clear. The hall went silent. Complete, suffocating silence. Darian's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. "What did you say?" Lyra's rational mind was screaming at her to apologize, to bow, to beg forgiveness. But that spark in her chest had caught, and it was burning through 21 years of swallowed rage. "I said I'm not broken." Her voice was stronger now. "I'm not damaged goods for you to inspect." His hand dropped from her chin. For a moment, nobody moved. Then Darian smiled. It was the most terrifying thing Lyra had ever seen. "Interesting." He turned to Cormac. "This one speaks out of turn?" Cormac's face had gone purple. "She's never— I'll have her whipped, Your Majesty. She'll— No." Darian held up a hand. "I want to hear what she has to say." He turned back to Lyra. "You don't think you're broken?" "No. Everyone else does." "Everyone else is wrong." Another smile, colder this time. Bold words from an Omega who can't shift. Shifting doesn't make someone whole. The words kept coming, like a dam had burst. And being able to shift doesn't make you right. Someone in the crowd gasped. Lyra didn't care. She was going to die anyway. Might as well die honest. Darian took a step closer. The temperature dropped another degree. "Are you saying I'm wrong?" "I'm saying you're looking at the wrong things." "And what should I be looking at?" Lyra met his eyes, that spark in her chest now a full flame. Whether someone can survive. Whether they can endure. Whether they're strong enough to keep standing when everything's trying to break them. She gestured at herself, at her worn clothes and bruised skin. "I'm still here. That's not broken." The silence stretched so long, Lyra thought she might actually die from the tension. Then Darian laughed. It wasn't a warm sound. It was sharp, cutting, genuinely amused. "You've got spine, I'll give you that." He circled her slowly, predator assessing prey. "Do you know what happens to Omegas who talk back to me?" "I can guess." "And you did it anyway." "I did." "Why?" Lyra thought about that. Why had she done it? What had possessed her to throw away 21 years of survival instinct for 30 seconds of defiance? "Because I'm tired," she said finally. "I'm tired of being invisible. I'm tired of being nothing. And if you're going to take me anyway, drag me off to whatever hell you have planned, then at least I'll do it on my feet." Darian stopped in front of her. They were close enough that she could see the gray in his eyes wasn't uniform. It was shot through with silver, like frozen metal. "I haven't decided to take you yet." "Then don't." His eyebrow raised fractionally. "You're refusing?" "I'm saying you don't want me. I'm wolfless. I'm damaged. I'm defiant. I'm every single thing you shouldn't choose." Lyra's heart was racing, but her voice stayed steady. "So don't choose me. Pick someone else. Pick all of them. Just leave me here." "And if I don't?" Lyra didn't have an answer for that. She'd played her only card, burned her only bridge. If he decided to take her anyway, she had nothing left. Darian studied her for what felt like an eternity. Then he turned to Cormac. "I'll take 6 of them, not this one." Relief crashed through Lyra so hard she nearly collapsed. He was leaving her. She'd done it. "Actually," Darian said, turning back, "you're coming too." The words hit like a physical blow. "What?" "You're coming with me." "You just said—" "I changed my mind." His smile was back, cold and sharp. "You wanted to be seen? Congratulations, I see you." "No." The word came out automatically. "I'm not going." The room erupted in shocked murmurs. Nobody refused the king. Nobody. Darian's expression didn't change. "That wasn't a request." "I don't care." Lyra took a step back. "I'm not going with you. You'll die here. Then I'll die here." "Caesar!" Cormac barked at his warriors, desperation making his voice crack. 3 guards moved forward, but Darian held up a hand. They stopped immediately. "No," he said quietly. "Let her run." Lyra didn't wait. She spun and bolted for the door, her feet slipping on the stone floor. Behind her she heard laughter, the king's laughter, dark and genuinely entertained. "She won't make it to the tree line," someone called out. 10 silver says she does, Darian replied. Lyra hit the door at a full sprint and kept running. Bashum. The compound's outer gate was chaos. Wolves were scrambling to prepare for the king's departure, loading supplies and readying horses. Nobody paid attention to one Omega running past. Lyra didn't stop. She crossed the muddy courtyard, ducked through the smithy, and hit the tree line at full speed. The forest swallowed her immediately, dense pine and shadow closing overhead. She'd run this path before, 6 years ago, when she'd tried to escape and failed. But she was older now, smarter. She knew where the patrol routes ran, knew which streams to follow to mask her scent. Not that it mattered. She wasn't trying to escape permanently. She was trying to survive the next hour. Behind her, she heard howls. The hunt had begun. Lyra pushed harder, her lungs burning. The forest floor was uneven, roots and rocks trying to trip her. Her worn boots had holes in the soles, and she could feel every stone, every thorn. A branch caught her shirt, tearing it. She ripped free and kept going. More howls, closer now. They were hurting her, she realized, pushing her toward the cliffs on the eastern edge of the territory. Box her in, trap her, drag her back. Lyra veered left, heading downhill instead. The terrain got rougher, loose scree sliding beneath her feet. She half ran, half fell down the slope, scraping her hands raw on stone and pine bark. A wolf burst from the trees to her right, massive, gray-furred, all muscle and teeth. Not one of the king's guards. One of Cormac's pack. It lunged. Lyra threw herself sideways, hitting the ground hard. The wolf's jaws snapped closed, inches from her face, close enough that she could smell its breath. She kicked out wildly, her boot connecting with its ribs. It barely flinched. She scrambled backward, grabbing a fallen branch, thin, rotted, useless, and swung it anyway. The branch shattered against the wolf's skull. It didn't even blink. Lyra's back hit a tree, nowhere left to run. The wolf advanced slowly, enjoying the chase, the fear. "Come on," Lyra gasped, her voice raw. "Do it. Get it over with." The wolf paused, tilting its head, almost curious. Then it crouched, preparing to spring. Another wolf slammed into it from the side, twice its size, black-furred and utterly silent. They collided in a snarl of teeth and claws, rolling down the slope in a chaos of violence. Lyra didn't wait to see who won. She ran. The trees thinned ahead, opening into a clearing. Bad. Open ground meant no cover, but the alternative was going back, and back meant the king. She broke into the clearing at a full sprint and stopped dead. The Alpha King stood in the center of the space, completely relaxed, like he'd been waiting for her. He hadn't shifted, was still human-shaped, but something about him felt more dangerous than any wolf. "That was fun," he said. "You're faster than you look." Lyra's chest heaved, her vision spotting. She couldn't catch her breath. Behind her, she heard wolves emerging from the trees, circling the clearing, cutting off escape. Darian walked toward her, unhurried. "You made it farther than I expected. I won the bet." "Stay back," Lyra warned, though she had nothing to back up the threat. "Or what?" He kept coming. "You'll fight me? You can barely stand." It was true. Her legs were shaking, exhaustion and adrenaline warring in her system. But she raised her fists anyway, bloodied knuckles and all. Darian stopped 5 feet away. "You can't win this." "I know." "Then why fight?" "Because I'm not broken." Lyra's voice cracked. "And I'm not yours." Something flickered across his face. Not quite respect, maybe recognition. "Everyone is mine." "No." "Yes." He took another step. "You can come willingly, or my guards will drag you. Either way, you're leaving this territory." "Then they'll have to drag me." Darian sighed like she was being tedious. He gestured to his guards. "Take her." The wolves moved in. Lyra swung at the first one, her fists connecting with nothing but air. Massive hands grabbed her arms, yanking them behind her back. She thrashed, kicked, bit at anything she could reach. It was useless. They were trained warriors, and she was a wolfless Omega who'd been surviving on scraps. Within seconds, she was immobilized, her face pressed into the dirt. "Let me go!" She couldn't stop screaming it, even though she knew it was pointless. "Let me go! Let me—" Pain exploded through her body. It started in her chest, that spark that had burned through her defiance, but now it was different. Hotter, wilder. It tore through her veins like molten metal, setting every nerve on fire. Lyra screamed, not in defiance this time, in agony. The hands holding her released immediately. She heard someone swear, heard bodies scrambling backward. The pain intensified. Her bones felt like they were cracking, reforming, breaking again. Her skin stretched, tore, reformed. She couldn't breathe, couldn't think, couldn't do anything but scream as something inside her woke up. Something that had been sleeping for 21 years. Impossible, someone whispered. Lyra's vision went white, then violet, then something else entirely. When she opened her eyes, the world had changed. Everything was sharper, colors brighter, sounds clearer. She could smell everything. The pine sap, the wolves' fear, the king's blood and leather and steel. She tried to stand and found herself on 4 legs instead of 2. She'd shifted. But this wasn't like the wolves around her. Her fur wasn't gray or brown or black. It was white, shot through with veins of deep violet that pulsed with light. Her paws were massive, tipped with claws like obsidian. And when she opened her mouth, the sound that came out wasn't a howl. It was a roar. The guards scattered. Even the king's elite warriors backed up, fear naked on their faces. Darian was the only one who didn't move. He stood perfectly still, his gray eyes locked on Lyra's violet ones. "Well," he said quietly, "this changes things." Lyra didn't understand what was happening, didn't understand what she'd become, what this meant. All she knew was that something ancient and furious had woken up inside her, and it wanted blood. She lunged. Darian moved faster than should have been possible, sidestepping her attack and drawing a blade in the same motion. Silver flashed. Lyra felt the sting across her shoulder, felt her own blood, too bright, almost luminescent, splash onto the ground. The pain focused her. She spun, claws raking out, forcing him back. "Stand down!" someone shouted. Maybe Cormac. Maybe one of the guards. Lyra didn't care. She attacked again, and this time Darian shifted mid-dodge. His wolf form was enormous, coal-black with eyes like frozen storms. They collided in mid-air, all teeth and claws and violence. Lyra had no training, no technique, but she had rage, and she had something else, something that whispered in her blood, teaching her where to strike, how to move. They broke apart, circling. Darian's lip curled, revealing fangs. Lyra snarled back. They clashed again, and again. Lyra was faster than she should have been, stronger than made sense. But Darian was the Alpha King, and he'd been fighting since before she was born. His jaws closed around her throat. Not hard enough to kill, just hard enough to pin her, to demonstrate dominance. Lyra thrashed, but his grip was iron. Her vision started to blur, oxygen cutting off. Then something inside her surged. That violet light in her veins flared bright, and power exploded outward in a wave that sent every wolf in the clearing staggering. Darian's grip released. He backed up, shaking his head like he'd been struck. Lyra stood, panting, blood dripping from her throat and shoulder. Around her, the clearing had gone completely silent. "What are you?" Darian's voice was rough, his wolf form already shifting back to human. Lyra didn't have an answer. She didn't know what she was, didn't know what had just happened. All she knew was that she was done running. She shifted back, the change smoother this time, less agonizing, and stood on shaking legs. Blood ran down her shoulder and throat, but she didn't fall. "I'm not broken," she said, her voice raw. "And I'm not going with you." Then her knees gave out, and the world went black. When Lyra opened her eyes, she was moving, not walking, being carried. Strong arms held her against a chest that smelled like leather and winter wind. Her head lolled to the side, vision swimming, and she caught glimpses of trees rushing past, heard the steady rhythm of boots on frozen ground. "Put me down," she tried to say, but her throat was raw, the words coming out as barely a whisper. The arms tightened. "You're awake. Good. Thought you might not make it." That wasn't the king's voice. Wrong cadence, wrong tone. Lyra forced her eyes to focus, tilting her head back to look at whoever was carrying her. A man she'd never seen before. Mid-30s maybe, with dark hair streaked with premature gray and a face that looked like it had forgotten how to smile years ago. Sharp features, calculating eyes the color of amber, and a scar that ran down his neck disappearing beneath his collar. "Who?" Lyra's voice cracked. She coughed, tasting blood. Save your strength, the man said. He didn't slow down, didn't look at her, just kept moving through the forest with the kind of purposeful stride that said he knew exactly where he was going. Lyra tried to struggle, but her body wasn't cooperating. Everything hurt. Her shoulder throbbed where the king's blade had cut her. Her throat ached where his jaws had clamped down. And beneath it all was a deeper pain, like something inside her had been torn apart and badly stitched back together. The king is 3 miles back and getting farther. The man vaulted over a fallen log without breaking stride. You made quite the impression. Half his guard wanted to kill you on the spot. The other half wanted to cage you and study you. What did you want? To get you the hell out of there before they decided. That made no sense. Lyra's brain was still foggy, thoughts moving like they were stuck in mud. She tried to piece together what had happened. The clearing, the pain, the shift. Her shift. She'd shifted. The memory hit her like cold water. She'd turned into something, not a normal wolf, something else. Something with violet veins and power that had sent trained warriors scrambling. What am I? The question came out desperate. The man glanced down at her, and for the first time something like sympathy crossed his face. That's a conversation for when you're not bleeding out. Lyra looked down at herself. Her shirt was soaked with blood, her shoulder a mess of torn flesh that should have hurt more than it did. Shock, probably. Or adrenaline. Or whatever supernatural biology had just woken up inside her. Where are you taking me? Somewhere safe. That's not an answer. It's the only one you're getting right now. He adjusted his grip, shifting her weight. You can trust me, or you can bleed to death in the woods. Your choice. Lyra didn't have the energy to argue. Her vision was starting to blur again, darkness creeping in at the edges. She tried to fight it, tried to stay conscious, but her body had other ideas. Don't fight it, the man said, his voice softer now. Sleep. You've earned it. The darkness swallowed her whole. She woke to warmth, not the wet warmth of blood or the feverish warmth of infection, actual, comfortable warmth. Fire heat. Blanket heat. Lyra's eyes snapped open. She was lying on something soft, a bed, an actual bed with clean sheets and pillows. The room around her was small but solid, rough wood walls and a low ceiling, a fireplace crackling in the corner. Light filtered through a single window, weak and gray like early morning. She sat up too fast and immediately regretted it. Pain lanced through her shoulder and she gasped, pressing her hand to the wound. Except there was no wound. Lyra pulled back the blanket, staring at her shoulder. The skin was smooth, unmarked except for a thin pink line where the king's blade had cut deep enough to scar. She touched it gingerly, expecting pain, finding only a dull ache. Accelerated healing, a voice said from the doorway. One of the perks of whatever you are. The man from the forest stood there, arms crossed, watching her with those amber eyes. In better light, Lyra could see he was younger than she'd first thought, maybe early 30s. His clothes were practical, worn leather and dark wool, the kind of outfit designed for function over fashion. Where am I? Lyra demanded. Safe house, about 15 miles north of Blackwood territory. Who are you? Ronan Hale. He stepped into the room, moving with a careful economy of motion. Former strategist for the King's Council, current exile, and apparently your only chance at survival. Lyra swung her legs off the bed, testing her weight. Everything held. Her body felt different, stronger, more solid, like she'd been rebuilt with better materials. I didn't ask for your help. No, you just shifted into a judgment wolf in front of the most dangerous man in the territories and expected to walk away. Ronan pulled a chair from the corner and sat, studying her. That was spectacularly stupid, by the way. A what wolf? Judgment wolf. He said it like she should know. Haven't you ever heard the old stories? Lyra shook her head. The pack had stories, sure, but they were all about strength and dominance and knowing your place. Nothing about violet-veined wolves that roared instead of howled. Ronan leaned back, the chair creaking under his weight. Before the pack system, before the hierarchy we have now, there were the judgment wolves. They were rare, maybe one in a generation, and they served a specific purpose, to check corrupted power. When an alpha became a tyrant, when a pack turned rotten, a judgment wolf would rise to balance the scales. That sounds like a myth. So did you, until yesterday. Ronan's expression was unreadable. The King's Council thought they'd eradicated the judgment line 200 years ago. Hunted them down, killed every last one. Or so they thought. Lyra's hands were shaking. She clenched them into fists, willing them to steady. You're saying I'm some kind of, supernatural police? I'm saying you're the thing every corrupt alpha fears. You're the wolf that can't be dominated, can't be controlled, and can't be ignored. Ronan stood, walking to the window. And now the king knows you exist. The implication settled over Lyra like ice water. He'll come after me. He already has. Sent trackers out before dawn. They're sweeping the territory in a grid pattern, working outward from where you collapsed. Ronan glanced back at her. We've got maybe 6 hours before they reach this location. Lyra stood, ignoring the way her legs wobbled. Then I need to run. Run where? You think there's anywhere in these territories the king can't reach? Ronan shook his head. Running won't save you. You need to learn how to fight. I don't know how. I know. I watched you in that clearing. You fought like a cornered animal, all instinct, no technique. Against untrained wolves, that might work. Against the king's hunters? He made a cutting gesture. You'll be dead in minutes. Lyra wanted to argue, but he was right. She'd gotten lucky in the clearing, had the advantage of surprise and whatever supernatural power had erupted from her. In a straight fight against trained killers, she wouldn't stand a chance. So teach me, she said. Ronan raised an eyebrow. Just like that? You said you were a strategist. Strategy is just smart fighting, right? Lyra met his gaze. Teach me how to be smart. Something flickered in Ronan's expression. Not quite a smile, but close. 6 hours isn't enough time to make you a warrior. Then make me a survivor. He considered her for a long moment. Then he nodded. Get dressed. There's clothes in the chest. Meet me outside in 5 minutes. He left, closing the door behind him. Lyra stood in the quiet room, her mind racing. This was insane. Yesterday she'd been scrubbing floors invisible and broken. Now she was apparently some kind of mythical wolf being hunted by a king. She should be terrified, and part of her was. But beneath the fear was something else, that same spark that had made her talk back to the king, that had driven her to run instead of submit. She wasn't going back to being invisible. Whatever came next, she'd face it on her feet. Lyra opened the chest and found simple clothes, a shirt that actually fit, pants that weren't held together by prayers and thread, boots that had intact soles. She dressed quickly, moving with care around her healing shoulder. When she stepped outside, she found Ronan waiting in a small clearing behind the safe house. The building was even smaller than it had seemed from inside. Basically a hunting cabin, weathered and anonymous. Around it, dense forest pressed in from all sides. Good, Ronan said, tossing her a wooden staff. You caught it. That's encouraging. Lyra looked at the staff in her hands. It was simple, unadorned, roughly the length of her arm. What am I supposed to do with this? Not die. Ronan picked up a second staff, testing its weight. First lesson, in a real fight, you won't always have claws or teeth. Sometimes you'll have whatever you can grab, a stick, a rock, a broken bottle. The weapon doesn't matter if you know how to use it. I don't know how to use it. That's why this is a lesson. He stepped into a stance, staff held loosely. Attack me. Lyra hesitated. What? You heard me. Attack. I don't want to hurt you. Ronan actually laughed at that. Trust me, that's not going to be a problem. Now stop thinking and move. Lyra gripped the staff and swung. It was clumsy, telegraphed, the kind of attack a child would make. Ronan sidestepped it easily and tapped her ribs with his own staff. Not hard, but hard enough to make the point. Dead, he said. Again. She tried again. Same result. He was always where she wasn't, moving just enough to make her miss, countering with precise strikes that never quite hurt, but always landed. You're thinking too much, Ronan said after the 8th failed attempt. Your body knows what to do. You shifted yesterday without any training, without any conscious thought. Your instincts are good. Stop overriding them with your brain. That doesn't make sense. It doesn't have to make sense. It just has to work. He reset his stance. Stop trying to hit me. Just move. Lyra closed her eyes, took a breath, and let go. She didn't think about the staff or the target or what she was supposed to do. She just moved. The staff swept out in an arc that felt right, felt natural. She felt rather than saw Ronan block it, felt the vibration through the wood, and flowed into the next movement without planning it. Strike, pivot, strike again. Ronan blocked everything, but he was actually moving now, actually engaged. When they separated, he was almost smiling. "Better," he said, again. They trained for what felt like hours, but was probably less than one. Ronan was a brutal teacher. He didn't praise, didn't encourage, just pointed out every mistake and demanded she fix it. But slowly, painfully, Lyra started to understand. Fighting wasn't about strength. It was about angles, leverage, momentum. It was physics dressed up in violence. "Good," Ronan said finally, lowering his staff. "You're a fast learner. Faster than should be possible." Lyra was breathing hard, sweat soaking through her borrowed shirt. "Judgment wolf thing?" "Probably. Your body's adapting, learning. It's in your blood." He set his staff aside. "But blood won't save you if you freeze up. Let's test your control." "My control over what?" "The shift." Ronan stepped back, giving her space. "You shifted yesterday out of panic, desperation. That's normal for a first time. But if you can't shift on command, can't control when and how it happens, you're a liability." Lyra's stomach clenched. "I don't know how I did it the first time." "Then figure it out." His tone was flat, uncompromising. "The King's hunters won't wait for you to feel ready. They'll force the shift, destabilize you, and kill you while you're confused. You need to own it." "How?" "That's the question, isn't it?" Ronan crossed his arms. "Every wolf I've known describes it differently. Some say it's like opening a door. Others say it's like falling. You tell me. What did it feel like?" Lyra thought back to the clearing, to that moment of pure agony and transformation. Like something breaking open, like I'd been locked in a cage my whole life and the bars finally shattered. "Good. Hold on to that feeling. Now do it again." "Just like that?" "Just like that." Lyra closed her eyes, reaching for that memory, the pain, the rage, the desperate clawing need to be more than what everyone said she was. Nothing happened. She tried again, pushing harder, forcing it. Still nothing. "You're trying to muscle it," Ronan said. "This isn't about force. It's about surrender." "That doesn't make sense." "Very little about you makes sense. Try it anyway." Lyra took a breath and stopped fighting, stopped trying to force the shift and just let go. Let herself feel the anger she'd been swallowing for 21 years, the humiliation, the fear, the bone-deep certainty that she was worth more than the world had decided. Heat bloomed in her chest, not the agonizing fire from yesterday, but something warmer, steadier. Her bones shifted, smooth and inevitable, and when she opened her eyes, she was looking down at Ronan from a wolf's perspective. "Well done," he said, and she could hear genuine approval in his voice. "Now shift back." That proved harder. Lyra didn't know how to reverse the process, how to fold herself back into human shape. She panicked, felt herself starting to spiral. "Breathe," Ronan's voice cut through the chaos. "It's the same process in reverse. You're not trapped. You're choosing." Choosing. Right. Lyra focused on her human form, on fingers instead of claws, skin instead of fur. The shift rippled through her, less smooth this time, leaving her gasping and naked on the forest floor. Ronan tossed her the clothes she'd shed. "Better. Practice that until it's effortless. You need to be able to shift mid-fight, mid-run, mid-anything." Lyra dressed quickly, her cheeks burning. "How long did it take you to learn?" "I'm not a shifter." At her surprised look, Ronan shook his head. "I'm human. Just a human who got too good at war and too comfortable questioning orders. The king exiled me 3 years ago. Been running ever since." "Then why help me?" Ronan was quiet for a moment, staring out at the forest. "Because I've seen what the current system does to people. I've watched it grind good wolves into dust, elevate monsters, punish strength, and reward cruelty." He looked back at her. "If you really are what I think you are, you might be able to change that. And I'd like to see that before I die." Before Lyra could respond, Ronan's head snapped up. "Quiet." She froze. "What?" "I said quiet." His hand went to the knife at his belt. "We've got company." Lyra strained her ears and caught it. the distant sound of movement through underbrush. Multiple somethings, moving in formation. The hunters. "They're early," Ronan muttered. "Inside. Now." They moved quickly and silently back to the cabin. Ronan grabbed a pack from the corner, already loaded with supplies, and thrust it at Lyra. "Back door. Head north. There's a river about 2 miles out. Follow it upstream until you hit the falls, then—" "What about you?" "I'm going to slow them down." He pulled out a second knife, checking the edge. "Get moving." "No." Lyra's hand shot out, grabbing his arm. "I'm not leaving you to die for me." "I'm not dying. I'm buying time." Ronan yanked free. "You're the important one here. I'm just a human who knows more about fighting than anyone I've ever met," Lyra interrupted. "I need you. So either we both run or we both fight. Your choice." Ronan stared at her like she'd grown a second head. Then, incredibly, he laughed. "You really don't know when to quit, do you?" "Not my strong suit." "Fine. We run together." He moved to the window, peering out. "But when I give an order, you follow it. No arguments, no debates. Understand?" "Understood." "Good. Now shift. We're going to need speed." Lyra let the shift take her, smoother this time. The world snapped into focus with new clarity. She could smell the hunters now, count them by scent. 6. No, 7. All predators, all trained. Ronan threw a leg over her back. "Don't throw me!" Then they were moving. Lyra burst from the cabin's back door at a full sprint, Ronan clinging to her fur. The forest blurred past, trees and shadows and frozen ground. She could hear pursuit immediately, howls echoing through the woods, growing closer. "Left!" Ronan shouted, and Lyra veered, trusting his direction. "There's going to be a drop. Don't stop, just jump." The ground disappeared beneath her paws. For one terrifying moment, they were airborne. Then she hit the opposite side of the ravine and kept running. Behind them, she heard yelps as at least one hunter failed to make the jump. "Good!" Ronan's grip tightened. "Straight for another 100 yards, then hard right." Lyra ran, her lungs burning. She was faster than she'd ever been, stronger. But the hunters were wolves who'd trained for this their entire lives. They were gaining. An arrow hissed past her ear. "They've got archers!" Ronan pulled his knife. "Evasive pattern, now!" Lyra started weaving, cutting left and right in random intervals. More arrows sliced through the air. One caught her flank, tearing a line of fire across her ribs. She yelped, but didn't stop. "The river!" Ronan pointed ahead. "Into the water!" Lyra hit the river at full speed, the freezing water a shock even through her fur. The current tried to sweep them downstream, but she fought against it, struggling upstream like Ronan had said. The cold water would mask their scent, buy them time. They made it maybe a mile before Lyra's strength gave out. She hauled herself onto a rocky bank, sides heaving, and collapsed. The shift rippled through her without her consent, leaving her human and shaking. Ronan was already on his feet, scanning the forest. "We've got minutes, maybe." "Can't run anymore," Lyra gasped. "Then we fight." Ronan pulled something from his pack, a small vial filled with dark liquid. Wolfsbane concentrate. Not enough to kill, but enough to level the playing field. He pressed it into her hand. "Get them close. Throw this in their faces. It'll disorient them, give you an opening. What about you?" He drew both his knives. "I've got my own tricks." The first hunter broke through the tree line. A massive gray wolf, scarred and savage. It locked eyes on Lyra and charged. Lyra threw the vial. Her aim was terrible, but the wolf was moving fast enough that it basically ran into the arc of liquid. The wolfsbane splattered across its face, and it yelped, stumbling, pawing at its eyes. Ronan was on it in a heartbeat, knives flashing. Not to kill, to disable. He cut tendons, hamstrung it, left it alive but unable to chase. 2 more hunters appeared. Lyra shifted, meeting them head-on. Everything Ronan had taught her clicked into place. She wasn't trying to overpower them, just redirect their momentum, use their strength against them. One she sent tumbling over the riverbank. The other she caught by the throat, her jaws clamping down just hard enough to feel bone. It yielded immediately, going limp in submission. Lyra released it and spun to find Ronan finishing off the third hunter. Same technique, surgical and brutal. When the last enemy limped away, they were left standing in sudden, ringing silence. Not bad, Ronan said, breathing hard. For your first real fight. Lyra shifted back, shaking. Is it always like this? This was easy. They were scouts, not elites. Ronan started walking, gesturing for her to follow. The king will send his best next. We need to be gone before they arrive. Gone where? North? Past the territories into the wild lands? Ronan helped her across a fallen log. There's a place up there, old sanctuary from before the pack system. If we can reach it, we might be able to... He stopped mid-sentence, his hand shooting out to stop her. Ahead, standing in the middle of the path, was a wolf unlike any Lyra had seen. Massive, easily twice the size of a normal shifter, with fur like hammered silver and eyes that glowed pale blue. And it wasn't alone. More wolves emerged from the forest, forming a loose circle. These weren't the king's hunters. These were something else. Something older. Ronan? Lyra whispered. Don't move. His voice was tight. Don't shift. Don't even breathe wrong. The silver wolf padded forward, its movements liquid and ancient. It stopped 10 feet away, tilted its head, and spoke. Wolves couldn't speak in their shifted forms. Everyone knew that. But this one opened its jaws, and words came out in a voice like grinding stone. The judgment has awakened, it said. You will come with us. Ronan's hand went to his knife, but Lyra caught his wrist. Something about these wolves felt different, not hostile, not exactly friendly either, but not enemies. Who are you? Lyra asked. The remnant, the silver wolf answered, the last of those who remember the old laws. You are untrained, unprotected, and hunted. You will die if you continue alone. So you're offering help? We are offering truth. The wolf's blue eyes locked onto hers, and a choice. Come with us and learn what you are meant to be, or continue running and be dead before the next moon. Ronan leaned close. This could be a trap. Everything's a trap, Lyra murmured back, but she was tired of running, tired of being one step behind, and something about the silver wolf felt right, like recognition, though she'd never seen it before. She stepped forward, ignoring Ronan's hissed warning. If I come with you, he comes too. The silver wolf's gaze shifted to Ronan, assessing. The exile knows our secrets. He would be a risk. Then take the risk. Both of us, or neither. A long, tense silence. Then the wolf's lips pulled back in what might have been a smile. You have your mother's stubbornness. Lyra's heart stopped. You knew my mother? We knew what she was, what she passed to you. The silver wolf turned, starting to walk away. Follow, both of you, and perhaps you will survive long enough to matter. Lyra looked at Ronan. He shrugged. Your call. She thought about the king hunting her, about spending her life running, always one step ahead of death, about never understanding what she was or why. Then she thought about that spark in her chest, the one that had made her talk back to the most dangerous man alive. Let's go, she said, and followed the silver wolf into the trees. Fort. Word count 4,471. I apologize, but I need to continue to reach the required 8,000 to 8,500 words. Let me continue the story. The remnant led them deeper into the wilderness than Lyra had ever been, past the territorial markers, past the hunting grounds, into forests so old and dense that sunlight barely penetrated the canopy. The silver wolf, who'd introduced itself as Kael, though Lyra suspected that wasn't its real name, moved with absolute confidence, never checking their pace, never looking back to see if they followed. They walked for hours. Lyra's borrowed boots started to rub blisters on her heels, but she didn't complain. Beside her, Ronan moved in tense silence, his hand never far from his knives. This is insane, he muttered when they stopped at a stream to drink. We know nothing about these wolves. They could be leading us to slaughter. They could have killed us back there and saved the walk, Lyra pointed out. Not if they want something from you first. He had a point, but Lyra's instincts, those same instincts that had kept her alive through 21 years in Blackwood Pack, said to trust this. Or at least, to see where it led. They reached the sanctuary as the sun was setting. It wasn't what Lyra expected. No grand fortress, no hidden city, just a series of caves carved into a cliff face, their entrances marked with symbols that hurt to look at directly. Old symbols. Older than the pack system, older than recorded history. Inside, Kael said, shifting to human form as they approached. In this shape, he was tall and lean, his silver hair falling to his shoulders, his pale eyes still glowing faintly. There is much you need to learn, and very little time to learn it. The caves went deep. Lyra followed Kael through twisting passages lit by luminescent moss, Ronan close behind her. Other wolves appeared from side tunnels, all of them watching her with the same intense, assessing gaze. She counted at least 20, maybe more, all older, all powerful. The remnant wasn't a small group, it was an army in waiting. Kael led them to a large central chamber, naturally formed with a ceiling so high it disappeared into shadow. In the center burned a fire that gave off no smoke, its flames dancing in colors Lyra had no names for. "Sit," Kael commanded. Lyra sat. Ronan remained standing, which earned him a few sharp looks from the assembled wolves, but no one forced him. Kael settled across the fire from Lyra, his pale eyes reflecting the strange flames. "What do you know about the Judgment Wolves?" "Only what Ronan told me, that we're supposed to check corrupt power." An oversimplification, but accurate enough. Kael leaned forward. Before the current hierarchy, there was balance. Alphas ruled their packs, yes, but they were accountable. When an alpha became a tyrant, when they used their power to harm rather than protect, a judgment wolf would rise. Rise how? From the pack itself. Always from the lowest ranks, the omegas, the outcasts, those who had suffered most under corruption. Kael's expression darkened. The judgment wolf would challenge the tyrant. If they won, the pack was reformed. If they lost, they died. But their very existence was a check, a reminder that power had limits. Lyra's throat was tight. "What happened to them?" "The king's grandfather happened." Another voice, this one belonging to an older woman who stepped from the shadows. She was ancient, her hair white as snow, her face mapped with scars. 200 years ago, when the current dynasty took power, they saw the judgment wolves as a threat, not to individual tyrants, but to the system itself. So they hunted us down. Us? Lyra looked between Kael and the old woman. I was the last judgment wolf before you, the woman said. My name is Thera, and I have been waiting a very long time for another to wake. The weight of that settled over Lyra like a physical pressure. Why me? Why any of us? Thera moved closer, studying Lyra with eyes that saw too much. The judgment chooses who it chooses. Perhaps because you suffered enough to understand what needs changing. Perhaps because you were strong enough to survive it. Or perhaps simply because the world needed you, and you answered. I didn't answer anything. I just refused to submit. Exactly. Thera smiled, and it transformed her scarred face. That is the heart of what we are. We refuse. Kael stood, pacing around the fire. The king knows what you are now. He won't stop hunting you, not just because you're dangerous, but because your very existence undermines his authority. If one judgment wolf can rise, others might follow. The entire system could collapse. Good, Lyra said flatly. The system is rotten. You won't think it's good when his elite guard corners you. Kael's voice was sharp. You've fought scouts and trackers. You haven't faced real warriors yet. The king's personal guard are trained from childhood to kill anything that threatens the hierarchy. They're fast, ruthless, and they won't hesitate. Then teach me to beat them. In what? A week? A month? Kael shook his head. It takes years to build that kind of skill. I don't have years. No, Thera agreed. You don't. Which is why you need to learn to use what you are, not just how to fight. The judgment isn't about combat skill. It's about authority. Lyra frowned. I don't understand. Watch. Thera shifted in a blur of motion, her form changing into a wolf similar to Lyra's. White fur, violet veins pulsing with light. But where Lyra's shift had been chaotic, barely controlled, Thera's was perfect, absolute. Power rolled off her in waves, pressing down on everyone in the chamber. Lyra felt her body trying to submit, trying to bow under the weight of that presence. She fought it, teeth gritted, refusing to yield. Thera shifted back, breathing slightly harder. That is judgment authority. It's not about size or strength. It's about will. When you embrace what you are fully, other wolves feel it. Most will submit without a fight. And the ones who don't? You destroy them. Thera's voice was calm, matter of fact, completely and without mercy, because they're the ones who would rather die than give up their power, and those are the most dangerous. Lyra thought about the king, about the cold calculation in his gray eyes. He won't submit. No, Kael agreed. Darian Crave was born to rule and raised to see submission as death. He'll fight you to the end. Then I'll fight back. With what training? Ronan spoke up for the first time, his voice cutting through the chamber. You shifted for the first time yesterday. You can barely control it. How exactly do you plan to face the most skilled fighter in the territories? I learned fast. Not fast enough. Lyra stood, frustrated energy coursing through her. Then what's your plan? Run forever? Hide in these caves while the king hunts down anyone who might challenge him? My plan is to keep you alive long enough to actually make a difference, Ronan shot back, which means being smart, not reckless. I'm not being reckless. You accepted a challenge from the Alpha King after shifting once. That's the definition of reckless. I didn't accept anything. He came after me. And you engaged instead of running. They were both standing now, facing off across the fire. The temperature in the cave seemed to drop, and Lyra realized violet light was crawling up her arms, her power responding to her anger. Enough! Thera's voice cracked like a whip. Both of you. The light faded. Lyra took a breath, forcing herself calm. Ronan stepped back, his jaw tight. The exile is right, Kael said. You're not ready to face the king. Not yet. But he's coming whether you're ready or not. He looked at Ronan. How long do we have? Days, maybe. The king doesn't move slowly when he wants something. Then days is what we have. Thera moved to Lyra, placing a hand on her shoulder. The old woman's grip was strong, steady. We can't make you a master in days, but we can teach you to survive, to use your gifts when it counts. Will you let us? Lyra met those ancient eyes and saw no pity there. No softness. Just acknowledgement of what she was and what she needed to become. Yes, Lyra said. Teach me everything. Training began before dawn. Thera woke Lyra while it was still dark, dragging her from the pile of furs that served as a bed. Up, we start now. Lyra stumbled after her into a different chamber, this one empty except for a circle carved into the stone floor. The symbols around the edge glowed with the same light as her veins when she shifted. In, Thera commanded. Lyra stepped into the circle. Immediately, pressure slammed down on her. Not physical, but something deeper. It felt like the weight of judgment itself, pressing against her mind. This is a training circle, Thera explained. It amplifies what you are, forces you to control it. If you lose focus, it will crush you. Crush me how? You'll collapse, mentally, not physically, but the effect is the same. You'll be useless. Thera crossed her arms. Now shift. Lyra reached for that heat in her chest, that spark of defiance. The shift came easier each time, her body learning the pattern. Within seconds, she stood on 4 paws, violet light pulsing through her fur. The pressure intensified immediately. Lyra's legs buckled and she fought to stay standing. It felt like drowning, like being buried alive. Control it, Thera said. The power isn't separate from you. It's you. Stop fighting it and direct it. Easier said than done. Lyra's vision was starting to blur, her muscles shaking. She tried to push back against the pressure, tried to force it away. Not force, guide. Thera's voice cut through the chaos. You're not a dam holding back a flood. You're a river choosing its course. Lyra stopped pushing. Stopped trying to contain the power and just let it flow. Through her limbs, through her blood, through her very bones. The pressure didn't disappear, but it changed, became part of her instead of something crushing her. Better, Thera said. Hold that. Build on it. They trained in the circle for hours. Shift, hold, release. Shift, hold, release. Over and over until Lyra's muscles screamed and her mind felt like splintered glass. When Thera finally let her stop, she collapsed outside the circle, panting. Tomorrow, we do it longer, Thera said, already walking away. Lyra wanted to cry or scream or both. Instead, she dragged herself to the main chamber where Ronan was waiting with food, some kind of dried meat and hard bread. It tasted like leather, but she was too hungry to care. Rough morning? Ronan asked. You have no idea. Actually, I do. I watched for a while. You lasted longer than I expected. Lyra looked up at him, surprised. That was good? For someone who learned to shift 2 days ago? It was extraordinary. He passed her a water skin. Drink. You're going to need it for this afternoon. There's more? Combat training. I convinced Kyle to let me run it since I actually know how humans fight. Half the wolves here have never faced an opponent who can't shift. That afternoon, Lyra learned how to fight dirty. Ronan was a brutal teacher. He showed her where to strike to disable an opponent: throat, knees, eyes. How to use her smaller size as an advantage, getting inside a larger fighter's reach. How to read body language, anticipate attacks, turn defense into offense in a heartbeat. And he didn't pull his punches. Every mistake earned her a bruise. Every moment of hesitation a reminder that hesitation got you killed. Again, he said for the 100th time, after putting her on her back with a sweep that she should have seen coming. Lyra rolled to her feet, favoring her left side where he'd struck her ribs. I'm trying. Try harder. The King's Guard won't give you a break because you're tired. They went again. This time, Lyra saw the feint, dodged the real attack, and managed to land a solid hit to Ronan's solar plexus. He grunted, stepped back, and actually smiled. Good. That would have dropped a normal fighter. He straightened. But against someone with supernatural healing, you need to follow through. Hit and move, never give them time to recover. They drilled that for another hour. By the time Ronan called a halt, Lyra could barely stand. Her body was one giant bruise, her knuckles split and bleeding. Rest, Ronan said. Tomorrow, we add weapons. The days blurred together. Training with Thera in the morning, combat drills with Ronan in the afternoon, and every evening, sessions with Kyle learning pack dynamics, hierarchy, the psychology of dominance. The king rules through fear, Kyle explained on the third night. Not just fear of violence, though there's plenty of that. Fear of chaos, of losing their place in the order. He's convinced the packs that the hierarchy is the only thing standing between civilization and savagery. But that's a lie, Lyra said. Is it? Before the current system, pack wars were constant. Territories shifted daily. Wolves died by the thousands. Kale's pale eyes were unreadable. The king's grandfather brought order, stability, peace, after a fashion. That's why wolves accept it, even when it grinds them into dust. So I'm supposed to offer them what? Hope that another system might be better? No, you're supposed to show them that this system is killing them. That stability built on suffering isn't peace, it's slow death. Kale leaned forward. When you face the king, you won't just be fighting him. You'll be fighting everyone who's invested in the lie that his rule is necessary. Lyra thought about the Omegas in Blackwood Pack, about Mira stepping on her hand, about 21 years of being nothing. They're wrong. Then prove it. On the fourth day, scouts brought news. The king's hunters had found the safe house. They were tracking north, methodically searching every cave, every hollow, every place someone might hide. 2 days, the scout reported. Maybe 3 if we're lucky. Kale looked at Lyra. Are you ready? She wanted to say yes. Wanted to believe that 4 days of training had transformed her into a warrior who could challenge the most dangerous man alive. But Thera's words from that morning still echoed in her head. You're getting better. But better isn't good enough, not yet. I don't know, Lyra admitted. Then we make you ready. Kale stood. Thera, accelerate her training. Ronan, drill her until she can't think. We have 48 hours to forge a judgment wolf who can survive. What followed was the hardest 2 days of Lyra's life. Thera pushed her beyond what should have been possible, keeping her in the training circle for hours until she learned to maintain her judgment form while fighting, talking, even sleeping. The violet light became part of her, always there, always ready. Ronan taught her every dirty trick he knew, how to fight multiple opponents, how to use the environment as a weapon, how to survive when you're outmatched and outgunned. He broke her down and built her back up, over and over, until her body moved on pure instinct. And at night, when she should have been resting, Kyle taught her the truth about the king. Darian Crave wasn't always a tyrant, Kyle said on the final night. 20 years ago, when he took the throne, There were wolves who thought he might actually change things. He was young, idealistic in his own way. But power corrupts. And absolute power, the kind the king wields, corrupts absolutely. What changed him? He lost someone. Kael's expression was distant. A mate, some say. Others claim it was a brother. Whatever the truth, he came back from that loss hollow. He stopped seeing wolves as individuals and started seeing them as pieces on a board, assets to use or threats to eliminate. And now I'm a threat. You're the threat, the one he can't control or predict. Kael met her eyes. When you face him, he won't just be fighting to maintain power. He'll be fighting to prove that his worldview, that strength and control are all that matter, is correct. If you beat him, if you show mercy or offer another way, you'll break something in him. What if I can't beat him? Then he'll kill you, and the judgment wolves will be gone forever. And the system he built will continue grinding wolves into dust for another 200 years. Kael's smile was grim. No pressure. On the morning of the second day, the scouts reported the king's forces had reached the outer caves. They'll be here by nightfall, Kael said. We can hold them off for a while, but not forever. This sanctuary isn't built for siege. Thera placed a hand on Lyra's shoulder. You've learned more in 6 days than most do in 6 years. You're ready. I don't feel ready. No one ever does. The old woman's scarred face was kind. But ready or not, it's time. As the sun set, Lyra stood at the cave entrance, looking out at the forest. Somewhere out there, the king and his hunters were coming for her, coming to end the threat she represented. She thought about the girl she'd been a week ago. Invisible, broken, worthless. That girl was gone. In her place stood something new, something that had been forged in pain and defiance and the desperate need to prove the world wrong. Lyra felt the shift ripple through her, smooth and controlled. Violet light pulsed through her fur, and when she opened her eyes, they glowed with the same ancient power that had terrified warriors and kings. Behind her, the remnant assembled. 20 wolves, all older than the current system, all ready to fight for a world that might be better. And at her side, Ronan checked his knives and smiled. Remember what I taught you. Don't die. Good. You were paying attention. In the distance, howls echoed through the trees, the king's hunters announcing their arrival. Lyra howled back, not a wolf's call, a judgment's roar, and deep in the forest she heard the hunting party falter. Let them fear, let them doubt. Let them understand that the girl they'd dismissed was gone, and in her place stood something that would either save them or destroy them. Either way, they'd never forget her name. The king's hunters emerged from the tree line like smoke given form. There were more than Lyra expected. Not just the elite guard she'd anticipated, but what looked like half an army. Maybe 50 wolves, all in formation, all moving with the practiced precision of soldiers who'd killed together before. They spread out in a wide arc, cutting off every escape route, trapping the remnant against the cliff face. And at their center, walking with the calm confidence of someone who'd never lost a fight, was Darian Crave. He'd shifted back to human form, wearing the same dark clothes from a week ago, the same cold expression. But something was different. His gray eyes found Lyra immediately, and in them she saw not anger, not even hatred, just calculation. Like she was a problem he was working through, testing different solutions until he found one that stuck. Lyra Voss, he called out, his voice carrying easily across the clearing. You've led us on quite the chase. Lyra didn't respond. Beside her, Thera and Kael stood in wolf form, violet and silver respectively, their combined presence radiating enough power to make the air taste like metal. The rest of the remnant flanked them, 20 against 50. Bad odds, but not impossible. I'm going to make this simple, Darian continued, taking a step forward. His guards moved with him, maintaining formation. You surrender now, come back with me willingly, and I'll spare your friends here. They can go back to hiding in their caves, living out their pointless existence in peace. And if I don't? Lyra asked. Then I kill all of them, starting with the human. Darian's gaze flicked to Ronan. He's been teaching you, hasn't he? I can smell his scent all over your technique. Such a waste. He was brilliant once, before he decided morality was more important than victory. Ronan's hand tightened on his knife. Still brilliant, Just pointing it at better targets now. Darian smiled. We'll test that theory. Enough talking, Kael growled, his wolf voice resonating in ways that shouldn't be possible. You came for her. Here she is. Fight or leave, but stop wasting our time. I don't think you understand your position, Darian said. I have 50 trained warriors. You have 20 relics clinging to a dead past. This isn't a fight. It's an execution waiting to happen. Then execute us. Lyra stepped forward, her violet eyes locked on the king's gray ones. Or are you afraid? The clearing went silent. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Darian's expression didn't change, but something flickered behind his eyes. Afraid of what? A wolfless Omega who got lucky enough to shift once? Twice, actually, and I'm still standing. Lyra felt the power thrumming through her veins, steady and controlled. 6 days of training had made her dangerous. You came all this way, brought an army for one Omega. That doesn't sound like confidence. That sounds like fear. Careful, Darian said softly. You're gambling with lives that aren't yours. So are you. They stared at each other across 30 feet of frozen ground. Lyra could feel the tension, the way both armies waited for the signal to attack. One word, one movement, and this would turn into a bloodbath. I'll offer you another option, Darian said finally. Single combat, you and me under the old laws, trial by dominance. You win, I leave. I win, you come with me, and your friends get to keep breathing. Kael snarled. Don't trust him. The moment you agree, he'll— I accept, Lyra interrupted. What? Ronan grabbed her arm. Are you insane? You've been training for 6 days. He's been fighting for 30 years. I know the math. Then you know this is suicide. Lyra looked at him, really looked at him, at the man who'd risked everything to save her, who'd taught her to fight, who'd believed she could be more than broken. It's the only way to end this without everyone dying. You know that. Ronan's jaw clenched. There's always another way. Name it. He couldn't. They both knew it. The numbers were too bad, the king's forces too overwhelming. Single combat was a risk, but it was the only risk that didn't end with the remnant slaughtered. I'll be fine, Lyra lied. You're a terrible liar. But Ronan released her arm. Don't you dare die on me. I didn't spend 6 days teaching you to survive just to watch you throw it away. Noted, Lyra turned back to the king. What are the terms? Darian gestured to the clearing. Here, now, shifted forms only. Fight until one of us yields or dies. No interference from either side. The old laws, as they were meant to be. And if I win, you leave. All of you. You stop hunting me, stop hunting the remnant, and you go back to your territories. If you win, I'll do more than that. Darian's smile was sharp. I'll acknowledge you, publicly, as a legitimate challenge to the hierarchy. Every pack will know what you are, and they'll have to choose. Support the old system or embrace the judgment. That was more than Lyra expected, too much more. Why would you offer that? Because I don't think you'll win. Darian started walking forward, his guards parting to let him through. But if you do, if you somehow manage to beat me, then maybe the system does need to change. Maybe I've become what you think I am. He stopped at the center of the clearing. So prove it. Show me I'm wrong. Lyra walked forward to meet him. Behind her, she heard Thera whisper, Remember what you are, not what they made you, what you chose to become. The clearing opened up around them, both armies backing away to give them space. Lyra could feel every eye on her, could smell the anticipation and fear mixing in the cold air. Darian rolled his shoulders, loosening up. Last chance to back out. Not my style. No, I'm starting to see that. He shifted in a blur of motion, his human form dissolving into the massive black wolf she remembered from the first fight. Bigger than any normal shifter, with eyes like winter storms and claws that gouged furrows in the frozen ground. Lyra let her own shift take her, smoother now, almost effortless. The violet light pulsed through her white fur, and she felt that ancient power settle into her bones like it had always belonged there. They circled each other, neither making the first move. Darian was assessing her, looking for weaknesses, patterns. Lyra did the same, remembering everything Ronan had taught her. Watch the shoulders, watch the eyes, see the attack before it comes. Darian lunged. He was fast, faster than anything that size should be. Lyra barely dodged, felt his jaws snap shut inches from her throat. She spun, raking her claws across his flank, drawing blood. First hit to her. Small victory. They broke apart. Darian's lip curled, revealing fangs like knives. He came at her again, this time with a feint she almost fell for. Almost. She sidestepped at the last second, using his momentum against him, letting him crash past her into empty air. "You've learned some tricks," Darian said, his wolf voice a low growl. "I'm a fast learner." They clashed again, and this time there was no holding back. Teeth and claws and violence, both of them moving faster than human eyes could track. Lyra felt pain blossom along her ribs where Darian got through her guard, tasted her own blood. But she gave as good as she got, landing hits that would have crippled a normal wolf. Darian wasn't normal. He shrugged off damage that should have dropped him, his supernatural healing working overtime. And worse, he was reading her. Every attack she made, he adapted to. Every strategy she tried, he countered. "You're good," Darian said, backing off to circle again. Blood matted his black fur, but he wasn't slowing down. "Better than you have any right to be after 6 days. But you're still fighting like someone who learned from books and drills. I learned by doing, by surviving." "Funny," Lyra panted, her own blood dripping onto the ground. "I thought I was the one who survived." She attacked before he could respond, putting everything Ronan taught her into practice. Don't give him time to think. Keep him reactive. Make him fight your fight, not his. It almost worked. She got inside his guard, went for his throat, and he twisted at the last second, catching her foreleg in his jaws. The crack of bone was audible across the clearing. Lyra yelped, stumbling. Her leg wouldn't hold weight. Darian released her and backed up, giving her space. Not out of mercy, out of confidence. "Yield," he said. "This is over." Lyra's vision swam with pain. Her foreleg was definitely broken, the bone already starting to knit back together, but not fast enough. She tried to put weight on it and nearly collapsed. "Yield," Darian repeated. "You fought well, better than anyone expected, but you can't win on 3 legs." He was right. Lyra knew it. Everyone watching knew it. This was done. But that spark in her chest, the one that had made her talk back to the king a week ago, that had driven her to run instead of submit, flared hot and bright. "No," she said. Darian sighed. Don't be stupid. There's no shame in—" Lyra lunged, not at him, at herself. She drove her working foreleg down onto the broken one, slamming the fracture against the ground. The pain was blinding, nauseating, but it did what she needed. Jolted the bone back into alignment, gave her healing factor something to work with. She heard gasps from the watching wolves, heard Ronan swear violently. Darian just watched, something like respect flickering in his storm-colored eyes. That was either very brave or very stupid. Can it be both? Lyra's leg was holding now, barely. The bone wasn't fully healed, but it was functional. Good enough. They came together again, and this time Lyra fought like she had nothing to lose, because she didn't. This was it. Win or surrender, live or die. There was no middle ground. Darian matched her intensity, his attacks coming faster, harder. They tore chunks out of each other, painting the snow red with blood. Lyra felt her strength flagging, felt her body starting to fail. Not yet. Not yet. She saw the opening. Darian had a tell, tiny, almost invisible, but there. When he was about to strike for the kill, his left ear twitched, just slightly. There. The twitch. He came in for her throat. Lyra didn't dodge. Instead, she moved into the attack, offering her throat like submission, and when his jaws closed around it, she struck. Her claws raked his exposed belly. Not a killing blow, but close. Deep enough to make him bleed, make him hurt. And while he was dealing with that pain, she twisted, using her whole body as leverage, throwing him off balance. They went down together, rolling through the snow. Lyra ended up on top, her jaws clamping around Darian's throat. Not hard enough to crush his windpipe, just hard enough to feel his pulse against her teeth. "Yield," she growled. The clearing was dead silent. Darian could have thrown her off. He was stronger, and she was running on fumes. But that would mean moving, and moving would mean giving her an excuse to bite down harder. His eyes met hers. Gray on violet, king on judgment. "Well played," he said quietly. Then his body went limp in submission. Lyra held the position for another 3 seconds, making sure everyone saw, everyone understood. Then she released him and stumbled back, her legs barely holding her up. She'd won. She'd actually won. The king pushed himself to his feet, shifting back to human form. Blood ran from the wounds on his torso, but he ignored it. His gaze swept the clearing, taking in his assembled army. "Stand down," he ordered. "All of you." "Your Majesty?" one of the guards started. "I said stand down." Darian's voice cut like a blade. "I gave my word. She won. We leave." Lyra shifted back, nearly collapsing in the process. Ronan was there immediately, catching her, keeping her upright. "You insane, brilliant idiot," he muttered. "Worked, didn't it? This time. Don't make a habit of it." Darian walked toward them, and immediately half a dozen remnant wolves moved to intercept. He held up a hand. "I'm not here to fight. I'm here to honor the terms." Kale growled, but didn't attack. Darian stopped a few feet from Lyra, studying her with those calculating eyes. "You surprised me," he said. "That doesn't happen often." "Good," Lyra managed. "You needed surprising." "Perhaps I did." Darian glanced at his assembled forces, then back at her. "A word of advice before I go. You won this battle, but there are forces in motion you don't understand yet, enemies you don't know exist. Beating me doesn't solve the problems with the system. It just makes you a target for everyone who benefits from it staying broken. I'll deal with them when they come." "I'm sure you will." Something almost like a smile crossed his face. "For what it's worth, I hope you succeed. The world could use some shaking up." He turned and walked away, his guards falling into formation around him. Within minutes, the entire army had disappeared back into the forest, leaving only blood-stained snow and the stunned silence of the remnant. Thera shifted back, her ancient face lit with something Lyra had never seen there before. Joy. 200 years, the old woman whispered. 200 years we've waited for this moment, and you did it. "I got lucky," Lyra said. "Luck had nothing to do with it." Kale moved closer, his pale eyes bright. "You fought with everything you had. You refused to quit. That's not luck. That's will." The remnant wolves began to howl, a sound of celebration and relief and hope. Lyra wanted to join them, wanted to feel that triumph, but something was wrong. She couldn't put her finger on it. The king had left. She'd won. Everything should be... An arrow punched through Kyle's chest from behind. He staggered, silver blood spraying, and collapsed. Before anyone could react, more arrows flew from the forest, not from the direction the king had gone, from the opposite side. "Ambush!" Ronan shouted, pulling Lyra down behind a boulder. Wolves poured from the trees, not the king's forces. These wore different colors, different marks, and at their head was a woman Lyra had never seen before, tall and lean, with platinum hair and eyes like chips of ice. "Kill them all," the woman ordered, "especially the judgment." The remnant scattered, trying to form defensive positions, but they were exhausted from preparing for the king's assault. The new attackers were fresh, organized, and utterly ruthless. Lyra watched in horror as wolves she'd trained with for 6 days were cut down. Thera took an arrow to the shoulder and went down hard. The rest were being overwhelmed, outnumbered. "Who are they?" Lyra gasped. "The Cleansers," Ronan said, his face pale. "An extremist faction. They believe any wolf with judgment blood needs to be eradicated. I thought they were extinct." "Well, they're not." Lyra tried to shift, but her body wouldn't cooperate. She was too injured, too exhausted from the fight with Darian. I can't shift." "Then we run." Ronan pulled her to her feet. "Now. I'm not leaving them. You don't have a choice." He physically dragged her toward the caves. "If you die here, everything they fought for dies with you." An explosion rocked the clearing. Lyra looked back to see the cave entrance collapsing, sealing off the sanctuary. The Cleansers were using explosives, trying to bury the remnant alive. Ronan hauled her into a side tunnel she hadn't noticed before, narrow and dark. Behind them, she heard screams, howls, the sounds of slaughter. "Keep moving," Ronan urged. The tunnel twisted and turned, forcing them to crawl in places. Lyra's injuries screamed in protest, but she kept going. Behind them, she heard pursuit, boots on stone, voices shouting coordinates. The tunnel opened into a ravine, steep-sided and treacherous. Ronan didn't hesitate, pulling Lyra over the edge. They slid down the slope, rocks tearing at their clothes, their skin. They hit the bottom hard. Lyra's vision sparked with pain, but Ronan was already moving, pulling her into the cover of an overhang. "Stay quiet," he whispered. Above them, she heard the cleansers searching, spreading out along the ravine's edge. They were systematic, thorough. Eventually, they'd find this hiding spot. "I'm going to draw them off," Ronan said. "No, not a debate." He pressed something into her hand, a small vial, similar to the wolfsbane he'd given her days ago. "Emergency reserve. If they corner you, break it. The fumes will disorient them long enough for you to run." "Ronan, don't." He kissed her forehead, quick and desperate. "You're going to change the world, Lyra Voss. Don't let them stop you." Then he was gone, scrambling out from the overhang and running in the opposite direction. Immediately, shouts went up. The cleansers gave chase. Lyra wanted to scream, wanted to chase after him, but her body wouldn't move. She was broken, bleeding, barely conscious. All she could do was hide in the shadows and pray he'd make it. 30 seconds passed. A minute. 2. Then she heard a scream that was definitely Ronan's, cut brutally short. "No, no, no, no!" Lyra tried to stand, tried to force her body to cooperate. It wouldn't. She was done, spent, running on nothing but rage and denial. Footsteps approached the overhang, careful, measured. The platinum-haired woman crouched down, peering into the shadows. "Found you," she said. Lyra fumbled for the vial Ronan had given her, but her fingers wouldn't work right. It slipped from her grasp, rolling away into the dark. The woman reached in, grabbed Lyra's ankle, and dragged her out into the open. Other cleansers gathered around, their faces cold, efficient. "Lyra Voss," the woman said. "Judgment Wolf. Abomination. Your bloodline ends today." She raised a silver blade, its edge glowing with runes that hurt to look at. A weapon designed specifically to kill judgment wolves. Lyra tried to fight, tried to do anything, but she had nothing left. Her body was broken. Her power was exhausted. Ronan was dead. The remnant was slaughtered. She'd failed. The blade came down and stopped. The woman holding it jerked, looking down at the massive black claw that had punched through her chest from behind. She made a wet, gurgling sound and collapsed. Behind her stood Darian Crave, shifted to his wolf form, covered in cleanser blood. The other cleansers attacked immediately. Darian tore through them like paper, faster and more brutal than Lyra had ever seen him. Within 30 seconds, they were all dead or fleeing. He shifted back, breathing hard, and looked down at Lyra. "You're welcome. You killed them. They were going to kill you." Darian wiped blood from his face. "And I gave my word I'd honor our agreement. Can't do that if you're dead." Lyra's mind was reeling. "Why? You won. I beat you. You should want me dead." "Maybe I did an hour ago." Darian knelt beside her, examining her injuries with a clinical eye. "But watching you fight, seeing what you're willing to sacrifice, you might actually be able to fix what's broken. And I'm tired, Lyra. Tired of being the villain in everyone's story. Tired of the system I inherited eating people alive." He looked at her, and for the first time, she saw something human behind those cold gray eyes. "So here's what's going to happen. I'm going to take you somewhere safe, get you healed. And then you and I are going to have a very long conversation about how to burn down the hierarchy without destroying the territories in the process. The remnant is scattered. Some survived, most didn't. The cleansers did their job well." His expression darkened. "But they made a mistake. They went after you while you were under my protection. That's a declaration of war, and I don't lose wars." Lyra tried to process this, the king, offering alliance, after she'd beaten him, after everything. "I don't trust you," she said. "Smart. I wouldn't trust me either." Darian carefully lifted her, surprisingly gentle. "But right now, I'm all you've got. Your human is dead, your sanctuary is destroyed, and you're too injured to fight. So you can accept my help, or you can die here in this ravine. Your choice." Lyra thought about Ronan, about his last words. Change the world. Don't let them stop you. She couldn't change anything if she was dead. "Fine," she whispered. "But if this is a trick, you'll kill me." Darian started walking, carrying her like she weighed nothing. You've already proven you can. I'll just have to make sure it's not a trick. As they moved through the ravine, Lyra caught glimpses of the battlefield above. The cave entrance was completely collapsed. Bodies lay scattered in the snow. The remnant, her teachers, her allies, gone. And Ronan, somewhere up there, bleeding out or already dead because he'd drawn the cleansers away from her. The grief threatened to drown her, but she pushed it down. Later. She'd mourn later. Right now, she had to survive, had to heal, had to figure out what the hell came next. Where are we going? She asked. My personal estate. North Territory. Darian adjusted his grip on her. It's warded against tracking, heavily defended, and the only place in the territories where you'll be safe from the cleansers. Why are they hunting me? Because your judgment, and they're fanatics who think the old ways were chaos. Darian's voice was grim. They've been operating in secret for decades, waiting for a judgment wolf to rise so they could kill them. You made it easy by announcing yourself so publicly. Lyra closed her eyes, exhaustion finally pulling her under. I'm so tired. Sleep. You've earned it. Don't kill me while I'm unconscious. Wouldn't dream of it. There was dark humor in his voice. You're far too interesting to kill. As consciousness faded, Lyra's last thought was of Ronan's smile, the way he'd believed in her even when she didn't believe in herself. She'd make his sacrifice mean something, or she'd die trying. When Lyra woke, she was in a bed. A real bed, soft and warm, in a room that smelled like cedar and winter roses. Sunlight streamed through a window that looked out over mountains she didn't recognize. She sat up carefully, expecting pain. Her injuries had healed, completely. Not even scars remained. The door opened and Darian entered, carrying a tray of food. He was dressed differently now. Simple clothes, no weapons visible. Almost human. You've been out for 3 days, he said, setting the tray on a side table. Your body needed the rest. Judgment healing is impressive, but it burns through resources fast. Lyra stared at him. At the man who'd been her enemy, who'd hunted her, who'd nearly killed her, the man who'd saved her life. Why? She asked. I told you. You're interesting. That's not a reason to betray your entire system. Darian pulled up a chair, settling into it with a sigh. The system is already betraying itself. The cleansers proved that. They've been operating under my nose for years, and I never knew. That means my control isn't as absolute as I thought. And if I can't control the extremists in my own hierarchy, what's the point of the hierarchy? He leaned forward, his gray eyes intense. You beat me in single combat. You showed mercy when you could have killed me. You represent everything the current system isn't: honor, restraint, the willingness to sacrifice for others. So maybe, just maybe, you're what comes next. I don't want to be what comes next. I just want wolves to stop hurting each other. Then we want the same thing. Darian stood. Eat. Regain your strength. When you're ready, we're going to plan how to dismantle 200 years of corruption without plunging the territories into war. He headed for the door, then paused. For what it's worth, I'm sorry about the human. Ronan Hale was a good man. He deserved better than bleeding out in a ravine. The grief Lyra had been holding back crashed through her defenses. Ronan was really gone. The man who'd saved her, taught her, believed in her, dead because of her. Did you find his body? She whispered. Darian shook his head. The cleansers burned everything. There was nothing left to find. He left, closing the door softly behind him. Lyra sat in the sunlight, in the comfortable bed, in the enemy's fortress, and let herself break. For Ronan, for the remnant, for Thera and Kael and every wolf who died believing she could make a difference. She cried until she had nothing left. Then she got up, ate the food Darian had brought, and started planning. They'd taken everything from her: her pack, her home, her teacher, her allies, but they hadn't taken her purpose. Lyra walked to the window looking out over the mountains. Somewhere out there, the cleansers were regrouping. Somewhere out there, wolves were suffering under a broken system. Somewhere out there, the world was waiting for someone to fix it. She touched the glass, her reflection staring back at her. White hair she'd never had before, violet eyes that glowed faintly even in human form. She looked like a stranger, felt like one too. The girl who'd scrubbed floors in Blackwood Pack was gone. In her place stood something new, something forged in pain and loss, and the desperate need to make it mean something. "I'll change the world," she whispered to her reflection. "For you, Ronan. For all of you." Behind her, she heard the door open again, but it wasn't Darian's footsteps. These were lighter, more hesitant. Lyra turned and froze. Ronan Hale stood in the doorway, very much alive, wrapped in bandages and leaning on a crutch. "Heard you were awake," he said, his voice rough but real. "Figured I'd stop by before you did something stupid in my memory." Lyra's mind went blank. "You're dead." "Clearly not. But I heard the scream was one of the cleansers I killed." Ronan limped into the room. "I led them on a chase, doubled back, took out 3 before they knew what hit them. The rest I lost in the ravines, been hiding out ever since." He gestured at his injuries. "Didn't come out unscathed, but I'm breathing." Lyra crossed the room in 3 strides and hugged him, hard enough to make him wince. "Easy, still recovering here." She didn't ease up. "I thought you were gone." "Takes more than a few fanatics to kill me." He hugged her back, gentler. "Besides, I told you, I didn't teach you to survive just to miss the revolution." Lyra pulled back, wiping her eyes. "How did you get here?" "The king's people found me, brought me in, patched me up." Ronan's expression turned serious. "Which brings up the obvious question. Why are we in the Alpha King's personal estate, and why hasn't he killed us yet?" "Long story." "I've got time." So Lyra told him. Everything. The fight with Darian, the cleanser ambush, the king's offer of alliance. Ronan listened without interrupting, his expression growing darker. "This is insane," he said when she finished. "I know. You're trusting the man who hunted you." "I'm not trusting him. I'm using him." Lyra met his gaze. "He has resources, power, influence, everything we need to actually make a difference, and he wants the same thing we do, to fix what's broken. Or he's playing you, using you to consolidate power in a new way." "Maybe. Probably." Lyra walked back to the window. "But what choice do I have? The remnant is scattered. My own pack would kill me on sight. The cleansers want me dead. Darian is the only ally I've got." "You've got me." "One human strategist against the world, great odds." Ronan laughed, pained but genuine. "We've beaten worse." Before Lyra could respond, the door opened again. This time it was Darian, and his expression was grim. "We have a problem," he said without preamble. "The cleansers just released a statement to all the packs. They're claiming you murdered the remnant, that you're a false judgment working with me to consolidate power. They're calling for every pack to mobilize against us." Lyra's stomach dropped. "They're framing me." "Effectively." Darian handed her a paper. "This was distributed to every alpha in the territories. By tomorrow, you'll be the most wanted wolf alive." Lyra read the statement, each word twisting the knife deeper. They'd turned her victory into tyranny, her defense into aggression, made her the villain. "What do we do?" she asked. Darian's smile was cold and sharp. "We give them a villain they'll never forget. If they want war, we'll give them war. But we'll fight it on our terms, by our rules. And when the dust settles, they'll have no choice but to acknowledge the truth." He looked between Lyra and Ronan. "I hope you two are ready, because tomorrow we're going to publicly challenge the entire hierarchy. Every corrupt alpha, every power-hungry beta, every wolf who's benefited from the broken system. We're going to drag them into the light and force them to answer for what they've done." "That'll make us targets," Ronan said. "We're already targets. Might as well be targets who matter." Darian's gray eyes glinted. "What do you say, Judgment Wolf? Ready to burn it all down?" Lyra thought about the girl she'd been. Invisible, broken, worthless. That girl would have said no, would have hidden, run, submitted, but that girl was dead. "Let's start a revolution," Lyra said. The War Council convened at dawn in Darian's strategy room, a windowless chamber deep in the estate, its walls covered with maps of every territory in the known lands. Lyra stood at the head of the table, still getting used to the fact that people actually listened when she spoke now. Darian stood to her right, Ronan to her left, both silent as she studied the territories marked in red. 19 packs, Lyra said, tracing the crimson marks with her finger. "That's how many have declared for the cleansers?" "23 as of an hour ago," one of Darian's advisors corrected. A sharp-faced woman named Vera, who'd served the king for decades. 4 more fell in line overnight. The cleanser's propaganda is working. Lyra's jaw clenched. 3 days since the statement went out, and already half the territories believe she was a murderer working with a tyrant to seize absolute power. The other half were waiting to see which way the wind blew before committing. "We need to get ahead of this," Ronan said, leaning heavily on his crutch. He was healing, but slowly. "Every day we wait, more packs join them." Agreed. Darian tapped a different section of the map. Neutral territories, still uncommitted. "These are the packs we can reach. The ones who haven't drunk the cleanser poison yet. We convince them first." "Convince them how?" Lyra asked. "With the same speech that got the remnant killed?" The room went quiet. Darian's advisors exchanged uncomfortable glances. Nobody wanted to address the elephant in the room, that Lyra's first attempt at changing the system had ended in slaughter. "With proof," Darian said finally. "We show them what the cleansers really are. Fanatics who burn down sanctuaries and murder anyone who questions them. We expose their leaders, their funding, their lies. And how do we do that when they control the narrative? We take it back." Darian pulled out a scroll, unfurling it across the table. "This is a summons to the Grand Assembly." Lyra stared at the document. She'd heard of the Grand Assembly. Every wolf had. It was the ancient gathering where all pack alphas convened to settle disputes, make laws, hear grievances. It hadn't been called in 50 years. "You're calling an assembly?" Vera looked shocked. "Your Majesty, the protocols alone will take weeks to—" "I'm invoking emergency protocol, war protocol." Darian's voice was flat, absolute. "The cleansers declared war when they slaughtered the remnant and framed Lyra. That makes this a territorial threat. The assembly convenes in 7 days whether the alphas like it or not. They'll bring armies," another advisor warned. "Every alpha will arrive with their full guard. This estate will be surrounded by thousands of wolves, many hostile." "Good. Let them bring armies." Darian looked at Lyra. "We'll bring truth, and one judgment wolf who can prove the cleansers are lying." "How?" Lyra demanded. "I can't prove I didn't kill the remnant. I wasn't even there when most of them died." "But the survivors were." Ronan straightened, ignoring the pain it caused. "We find them, get their testimony, present it at the assembly." "The survivors are scattered and hiding," Vera pointed out. "We have no way to— I can find them." Everyone turned to look at Lyra. She met their stares evenly. "The remnant knew me. Some of them survived. I felt it when the caves collapsed. If I go looking, they'll recognize what I am. They'll come to me." "That's a massive risk," Darian said. "The moment you leave this estate, you're exposed. The cleansers will hunt you." "Let them hunt." Lyra straightened, feeling that familiar spark ignite in her chest. "I'm tired of hiding. We need those witnesses, and I'm the only one who can get them. So I'm going." Ronan grabbed her arm. "Not alone, you're not. You can barely walk. Then I'll limp dramatically while watching your back." His amber eyes were hard. "Not negotiable." Lyra wanted to argue, but she could see the determination in his face. He'd already lost her once. He wasn't letting it happen again. "Fine," she said. "We leave tonight." The advisors erupted in protest, but Darian silenced them with a gesture. "Let them go. We'll need those witnesses if we want any chance at the assembly." He looked at Lyra. 7 days. That's all you have. Find the survivors, get their testimony, and get back here alive. Think you can manage that?" "I've managed worse." "Yes, you have." Something almost like respect flickered in his gray eyes. "Don't make me regret trusting you." They left under cover of darkness, slipping out through a tunnel that emerged 3 miles from the estate. Ronan had procured supplies, travel packs, warm clothes, enough food for a week, and weapons. Lots of weapons. "You really think they'll attack us?" Lyra asked as they hiked through the frozen forest. "I think they'd be stupid not to." Ronan checked the blade at his belt for the 3rd time. "We're 2 targets walking through hostile territory. If the cleansers have any sense, they've got scouts watching every route out of the estate." Comforting. "I'm not here to comfort you. I'm here to keep you alive." They traveled through the night, moving fast and quiet. Lyra's enhanced senses kept them ahead of any pursuit. She could smell wolves miles away, could hear footsteps through snow-covered ground. Twice they had to detour around cleanser patrols. Once they barely avoided a trap, Lyra's instincts screaming warning just before Ronan would have triggered a tripwire. By dawn, they'd covered 30 miles and crossed into neutral territory. The pack here, Rivercrest, had a reputation for staying out of politics. They valued trade over conquest, peace over power. If any remnant survivors had gone to ground, this would be the place. "Where do we even start?" Ronan asked as they approached the territory's border markers. "We can't exactly walk into their compound asking if they're hiding fugitives. We don't have to." Lyra closed her eyes, reaching for that connection she'd felt during her training. The remnant had taught her that judgment wolves could sense each other, a resonance in the blood, like recognizing family you'd never met. "I'll call them." "Call them how?" "Like this." Lyra let the shift take her, smoother than breathing now, and unleashed her judgment presence. Not aggressive, not threatening, just a signal, a beacon that said, "I'm here. I'm alive. Come home." The power rippled outward like a stone dropped in still water. Lyra held it for 30 seconds, then shifted back, gasping. "Did it work?" Ronan asked. "I don't know." "We'll have to—" A wolf emerged from the trees. Small, gray-furred, with scars across its muzzle. It limped as it approached, favoring its back leg, and when it got close enough, it shifted. "You're alive," the woman said, her voice cracking. She was young, maybe 20, with hollow eyes and burns on her arms. "We thought they'd killed you." "They tried." Lyra moved closer, recognizing her now. "You're Senna, from the remnant. What's left of it?" Senna's laugh was bitter. "There's 11 of us. 11 out of 37. The rest died in the caves or were hunted down after." "Where are the others?" "Hiding, scattered across 3 territories. When the caves collapsed, we ran, kept running." Senna's eyes filled with tears. "Thera died protecting us. Kael held the entrance while we escaped. They died so we could live, and now we're cowering in the woods like prey." Lyra's throat tightened. "They died fighting for something better. That's not nothing." "Feels like nothing when you're the one who survived." Senna wiped her eyes roughly. "Why are you here?" "To find you. All of you." Lyra explained about the assembly, about the need for witnesses who could testify to what really happened. "You saw the cleansers attack. You saw what they did. The territories need to hear that truth." Senna was quiet for a long moment. "If we testify, we'll be marked. Every cleanser sympathizer will hunt us." "Probably." "They'll kill us." "Maybe. Or maybe we finally stop running and start fighting back." Lyra met her gaze. "I can't force you, none of you. But if we don't stand up at the assembly, if we let the cleanser's lies become truth, then Thera and Kael and everyone else died for nothing." Senna stared at her, then at Ronan, then back at Lyra. "You really think we can win?" "I think we have to try." "That's not the same thing." "No, but it's all we've got." Senna laughed again, this time with something like hope. "All right, I'll gather the others. Meet us at the Whispering Falls tomorrow at dusk. It'll take that long to get everyone together." "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet. Half of them will probably refuse to come." Senna shifted back to wolf form. "But I'll try." She disappeared into the forest, leaving Lyra and Ronan alone in the growing daylight. "1 down," Ronan said. 10 to go. If they come, they'll come. You're a judgment wolf. They can't ignore that call, even if they want to." They found shelter in an abandoned hunting cabin and spent the day resting, planning. Lyra couldn't sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the remnant falling, heard Thera's last roar, watched Kael collapse with an arrow through his chest. "Stop," Ronan said from across the room. "Stop what?" "Torturing yourself. I can hear you thinking from here." Lyra opened her eyes. "People died because of me." "People died because the cleansers are murderous fanatics. Don't confuse cause and effect." Ronan sat up, wincing. "You didn't ask them to fight for you. They chose it. They believed in what you represent." "What do I represent? I'm just an Omega who got lucky." "You're a judgment wolf who refused to submit to a tyrant. You're proof that the system can be challenged. That's worth dying for. Ronan's voice softened. Hell, I almost died for it, twice, and I'd do it again. Why? Because I'm tired of watching good wolves get crushed. Because I spent 20 years serving a system I knew was rotten. Because when I met you, I saw something I hadn't seen in a long time. Someone who actually gave a damn about making things better instead of just surviving them. He smiled slightly. Plus, you're stubborn as hell, and I enjoy watching you prove everyone wrong. Despite everything, Lyra smiled back. Is that your way of saying you believe in me? That's my way of saying don't waste their sacrifice by doubting yourself now. The next evening, they made their way to Whispering Falls, a waterfall on the edge of Rivercrest territory, isolated and easy to defend. Lyra's nerves were taut as they approached. What if Senna was wrong? What if none of the survivors came? But as they entered the clearing, Lyra saw them. 11 wolves, all in human form, all bearing the scars of the cleanser attack. Senna stood at their center, her expression fierce. They came, she said simply. Lyra looked at the assembled survivors. Some she recognized from her training, younger wolves who'd been learning the old ways. Others were strangers, their faces hard with loss. Thank you, Lyra said. I know what I'm asking. I know the risk. We know it too. An older man stepped forward. His left arm was missing below the elbow, the wound still healing. But Senna's right. We can't keep hiding. The cleansers will hunt us until we're extinct, testimony or not. Might as well make it count. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the group. Not enthusiasm. These wolves were too tired, too broken for that. But determination. The grim acceptance of people who'd already lost everything and had nothing left but purpose. The assembly is in 5 days, Lyra said. We need to get you there safely. That means traveling together, staying ahead of cleanser patrols. We're not warriors, a younger woman said nervously. Most of us are scholars, teachers. We can't fight like you. You don't have to fight. That's what I'm for. Lyra met each of their gazes in turn. I'll keep you safe. I swear it. Big promise from one wolf, someone muttered. She beat the Alpha King in single combat, Ronan said quietly. I was there. I watched her take his killing strike and turn it into submission. Trust me when I say she can keep that promise. The survivors exchanged glances, uncertainty warring with hope. Finally, Senna spoke. Then we follow your lead. Get us to the assembly alive, and we'll tell them everything. The journey back to Darian's estate should have taken 3 days. With 11 traumatized survivors and only 2 fighters, Lyra expected it to take 5, maybe 6. The cleansers attacked on the second day. They came at noon when the sun was high and shadows were short, the worst possible time for an ambush, which meant they were confident enough not to care. 20 wolves, all in formation, cutting off the path ahead. Keep moving, Lyra told the survivors. Don't stop, don't look back. There's too many, Senna hissed. We should scatter, hide. No, we stay together. Lyra shifted, violet light pulsing through her fur. Ronan, guard the rear. If any get past me, you know what to do. Don't let any get past you, Ronan replied, already drawing his knives. The cleansers advanced. Lyra positioned herself at the front of the group, alone against 20. She should have been terrified. A week ago, she would have been. But Thera's training had taught her something crucial. Being a judgment wolf wasn't about fighting better. It was about being undeniable. Lyra let her presence flare, not aggressive, not attacking, just existing at full power, every ounce of her judgment authority on display. The effect was immediate. The approaching wolves faltered, their formation breaking as instinct warred with orders. Stand down, Lyra said, her voice carrying across the clearing. I don't want to fight you. You're a murderer, one of them shouted. You slaughtered the remnant. No, the cleansers did. And these wolves behind me can prove it. Lyra took a step forward. But if you attack, if you force this fight, I'll give you the violence you're looking for, and it won't end well for you. She's bluffing, another cleanser said. She's outnumbered 20 to 1. Then attack me. Test the theory. Lyra's violet eyes blazed. But understand this. I've beaten trained warriors, elite guards, and the Alpha King himself. You really think 20 of you will make a difference? Uncertainty rippled through their ranks. Lyra could smell it, the fear, the doubt. They'd expected an easy target, Instead, they'd found something that made their instincts scream predator. "You're protecting witnesses," the lead cleanser said. "We can't let them reach the assembly." "You can't stop them." Lyra let violet light crawl up her legs, her power building. "But you can try. Come at me. All 20 at once. See what happens." For a long moment, nobody moved. Lyra could hear her own heartbeat, could feel the tension stretched to breaking. Then the lead cleanser broke. "Retreat! Fall back!" "What?" one of his subordinates protested. "We have orders to—" "I said retreat!" The leader was already backing away, his eyes never leaving Lyra. "She's not bluffing. Look at her. Really look. That's not fear. That's a predator deciding whether to kill us all." They withdrew, slowly at first, then faster. Within minutes, they disappeared into the forest, leaving Lyra and the survivors alone. Lyra held her stance for another 30 seconds, making sure they were really gone. Then she shifted back, legs shaking. "You just stared down 20 wolves," Senna breathed. "Without fighting. How did you—" "Thera taught me. It's not about strength. It's about will." Lyra's voice was rough. "They believed I'd kill them because I believed it too, that's all." "That's all?" Ronan limped up, shaking his head. "You just rewrote combat doctrine with nothing but intimidation. Do you understand how terrifying you are?" "Good. Terrifying keeps us alive." They kept moving, faster now. Word of the confrontation would spread. Other cleanser cells would hear that Lyra had faced down 20 warriors without bloodshed. Some would be emboldened. Others would hesitate. Hesitation was all they needed. They reached Darian's estate 3 days later, exhausted but intact. The king himself met them at the gates, his expression unreadable as he surveyed the ragged group of survivors. 11, he said. "Better than I expected." 11 who saw everything, Lyra replied. "They'll testify." "Good. Because the assembly convenes tomorrow, and half the alphas are already calling for your head." Darian gestured for them to follow. "Come inside. We have a lot to prepare, and very little time to do it." The great hall where the assembly convened was ancient, older than the current hierarchy, older than anyone could remember. Its walls were carved from a single massive stone, its ceiling lost in shadow, its floor inlaid with symbols that hurt to look at directly. Every pack alpha in the territories was here, arranged in a circle around the central floor. Behind them, their guards and advisors formed a second ring. The hall held maybe 300 wolves, and every single one of them was watching Lyra. She stood at the center, alone except for the 11 survivors arranged behind her. Darian sat in his throne to one side, the Alpha King's seat, elevated slightly above the others. He'd insisted she face the assembly alone, that she prove herself without his visible support. "Smart politics," Ronan had said when explaining it. "If he defends you, they'll say you're his puppet. You have to win them over yourself." So here she was, alone, facing 300 wolves who thought she was a murderer. The trial began. The cleansers had sent representatives. The platinum-haired woman who'd tried to kill Lyra in the ravine, now clean and polished, standing among the accusers. Her name was Marin, and she spoke first. "The evidence is clear," Marin said, her voice carrying across the hall. Lyra Voss conspired with the Alpha King to eliminate the remnant. They represented the old ways, a threat to the new order. So she infiltrated them, gained their trust, and then led the king's forces directly to their sanctuary. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the assembled alphas. Lyra's hands clenched into fists. "The survivors will tell you otherwise," Marin continued, "but consider their position. They're dependent on Voss for protection, for resources. Of course they'll say whatever she wants. Their testimony is worthless." "Is it?" Lyra's voice cut through the hall. "Or are you just afraid of what they'll say?" "I'm not the one on trial here." "Maybe you should be." Lyra took a step forward. "You claim I led the king's forces to the sanctuary, but the king was there first, fighting me in single combat. Every wolf present saw it. Are you saying he attacked his own conspiracy?" "A staged fight to give you credibility. He broke my leg, tore open my shoulder, nearly killed me. That's one hell of a stage performance." Marin's expression didn't waver. "Healing is fast for your kind. Temporary pain is a small price for permanent power." Lyra could feel the assembly shifting, uncertainty giving way to suspicion. Marin was good. She'd twisted every fact, anticipated every defense. Lyra needed to change the game. "Let's talk about what happened after the king left," Lyra said. "You attacked. Not the king's forces, yours, the cleansers. You brought explosives, collapsed the caves, slaughtered everyone you could find. We responded to a threat. You'd just proven yourself capable of defeating the Alpha King. That made you dangerous." "Dangerous to who? Tyrannical alphas? Corrupt systems?" Lyra's violet eyes blazed. "Or dangerous to your plan to keep the territories locked in fear?" "You're deflecting. I'm asking a question." Lyra turned to address the assembled alphas directly. "The cleansers claim they're protecting the hierarchy. But from what? From wolves who want a say in their own governance? From omegas who refuse to be property? From anyone who dares question whether the system we have is actually serving us?" Silence. Several alphas shifted uncomfortably. "The remnant wasn't a threat," Lyra continued. "They were scholars, teachers, wolves, who remembered a time before the current system, when balance mattered more than domination. The cleansers murdered them, not because they were dangerous, but because they were inconvenient, because they represented an alternative. And that terrified you." Marin's composure finally cracked. "You know nothing about what terrifies me." "Then tell us. Tell the assembly why you really hunt judgment wolves, why you've spent centuries trying to erase us from history." Lyra took another step forward. "It's because we're a check on your power, isn't it? As long as judgment wolves exist, tyrants can be challenged. Corrupt alphas can be deposed. The system can change. And you can't have that. You need wolves to believe the hierarchy is absolute, eternal, unchangeable. Because the moment they realize it's not, the moment they understand they have power too, you're finished." "Enough!" Marin's voice cracked like a whip. "You want proof she conspired with the king? Look around. She stands here protected by his guards, housed in his estate, granted audience at his assembly. If that's not conspiracy, what is?" "It's alliance," Darian said, speaking for the first time. Every head turned toward him. "She beat me in single combat. Under the old laws, that makes her my equal, not my subordinate. So yes, I'm protecting her. Yes, I'm granting her audience. Because she earned it." The hall erupted in shocked murmurs. The Alpha King didn't acknowledge equals, ever. "More than that," Darian continued, standing, "I'm proposing we reinstate the judgment protocols. Let judgment wolves rise again, as they were meant to. Let them serve as checks on alpha power, ensuring we rule justly instead of simply ruling." The murmurs turned to shouts. Alphas were on their feet, some in support, most in opposition. The assembly dissolved into chaos. "Order!"
Balmerses.
Boakot. One of the elder alphas, a massive man named Garrett, who ruled the Eastern Territories, slammed his staff against the floor. "Order! The assembly will come to order!" Slowly, reluctantly, the wolves settled. Garrett looked between Darian, Lyra, and Marin, his expression grim. "This assembly cannot decide policy based on accusations and denials," he said. "We need concrete evidence, so I propose a compromise. Let the survivors testify. Let us hear their account firsthand. If their testimony is credible, we'll consider the judgment protocols. If not, we'll address the conspiracy charges." "I agree," Marin said quickly. Too quickly. Lyra's instinct screamed warning. "What are you—" "Bring forth the witnesses," Garrett commanded. The 11 survivors stepped forward, Senna at their lead. They looked terrified. 11 traumatized wolves facing 300 hostile strangers, but they stood firm. "State your names and your testimony," Garrett said. Senna spoke first, her voice shaking but clear. She described the attack, the cleanser forces, the explosives, the slaughter. The others corroborated her story, each adding details, painting a picture of calculated murder. The assembly listened in silence. When the last survivor finished, Garrett nodded slowly. "This testimony is compelling," he said, "but the cleansers claim it's coerced, that these wolves are dependent on Lyra Voss and will say anything to protect her. How do we verify the truth?" "I can prove it," Marin said, her smile cold. She gestured, and 6 of her wolves dragged someone into the hall. A woman, beaten and bloodied, barely conscious. It was Thera. Lyra's heart stopped. The old woman was alive. Barely. Covered in wounds that weren't healing, her white hair matted with blood. "We found her in the ruins," Marin said. "The last judgment wolf before Voss. She's been imprisoned, interrogated, and she's confirmed everything. Lyra Voss conspired with the king, the survivors are lying, and the judgment line dies with us." Thera raised her head, her scarred face a mask of pain. Her eyes found Lyra's, and she smiled. "You're right about one thing," Thera rasped. "The judgment line ends here, because I'm passing it on." She shifted, broken, bleeding, barely able to stand, and unleashed her full judgment presence. Violet light exploded through the hall, so bright it was blinding. The power wasn't just hers. It was every judgment wolf who'd come before, every ancestor who'd fought and died to check tyranny. And she was giving it all to Lyra. The transfer hit like lightning. Lyra screamed as centuries of knowledge, power, and purpose flooded into her. She could feel Thera's memories, her strength, her absolute conviction that the world could be better. "Remember," Thera whispered, her voice somehow carrying across the chaos. "You are not broken. You are chosen. Now prove it." The old woman collapsed. Her light faded. And Lyra knew, even before Senna's anguish cry confirmed it, that Thera was gone. But the power remained. Lyra stood, violet light blazing so bright the wolves nearest her backed away. This wasn't just her strength anymore. It was generations of judgment wolves, all of them speaking through her. "You wanted proof?" Lyra's voice resonated with layers of sound, as if multiple voices spoke in unison. "Here's your proof." She turned to Marin, and the cleanser leader actually flinched. "You claim we're dangerous," Lyra said. "You're right. We are. Because we judge. And we find you guilty." She didn't attack, didn't need to. The judgment power itself did the work, reaching out, touching every cleanser in the hall, and revealing them. Not just what they'd done, but what they were. The cruelty, the fanaticism, the innocent blood on their hands. The assembly saw it all, felt it all. There was no denying, no spinning, no lies. Just truth, laid bare, and undeniable. When the power faded, Marin was on her knees. So were all the cleansers, broken by their own guilt, by the weight of their crimes made visible. Garrett stared at Lyra, his expression awestruck. "What are you?" "I'm what happens when you push the powerless too far," Lyra said. Her voice was her own again, but the authority remained. "I'm what rises when the system becomes rot. I'm judgment, and the verdict is in." She looked around the hall, meeting the eyes of every alpha, every warrior, every wolf who'd come expecting to witness her execution. "The hierarchy is broken," Lyra said, "not because of one tyrant or one corrupt pack, but because the entire foundation is diseased. You rule through fear instead of consent. You hoard power instead of sharing it. You punish strength in the weak and reward cruelty in the strong. And you've done it for so long you've forgotten there was ever another way." "So what's your solution?" an alpha challenged. "Tear it all down? Plunge us into chaos?" "No, we rebuild together." Lyra gestured to the survivors, to Darian, to Ronan. "Not with one voice, but many. Not with absolute power, but balanced authority. We create a system where alphas can be challenged, where omegas have rights, where strength serves the pack instead of just the strong." "Idealistic nonsense," someone muttered. "Maybe, but it's better nonsense than what we have now." Lyra's violet eyes swept the assembly. "I'm not asking you to follow me. I'm not trying to replace the king with myself. I'm asking you to try something new, something that might actually work. And if it fails, you can go back to the old ways, but if it succeeds..." She let the possibility hang in the air. Garrett was the first to stand. "I'll hear your proposal. My pack will participate in this experiment." Another alpha stood, then another. Not all of them, maybe a third of the assembly. But it was enough. Darian rose from his throne. "Then let it be recorded. The assembly has voted to reinstate judgment protocols and restructure territorial governance. We have 6 months to draft a new system. At the next assembly, we'll vote on implementation." He looked at Lyra, and for the first time she saw no calculation in his eyes, just acknowledgement. "The age of the king is over," he said quietly. "Welcome to whatever comes next." The assembly dissolved in chaos, alphas arguing, celebrating, plotting. Lyra barely noticed. She was staring at Thera's body, at the old woman who'd given everything so Lyra could have this moment. Ronan appeared at her side, his hand finding hers. "You did it. We did it. All of us." Lyra's voice cracked. "But the cost was worth it, because now they'll remember, not just her name, but what she fought for, what you're still fighting for." Senna and the other survivors gathered around Thera's body, their grief quiet but profound. They'd lost another mentor, another piece of their history, but they'd won something too. A chance, a voice, a future that might actually be different. Lyra knelt beside Thera, touching the old woman's scarred hand. "Thank you," she whispered, "for everything. I won't waste it." The violet light pulsed once under her skin, like an answer, like approval, like a promise that the fight wasn't over, but for the first time in 200 years, they were finally winning. The burial took place at dawn, on a hillside overlooking 3 territories. Thera had requested it years ago, according to Senna, a place where the sun rose first, where she could watch over the land she'd fought to change. Lyra stood at the edge of the grave, watching as the survivors lowered the old woman's body into the earth. No coffin, just wrapped in white cloth, the way judgment wolves had been buried for 1,000 years, returned to the ground that had given them strength. "She told me once," Senna said quietly, standing beside Lyra, "that she'd waited 200 years to pass on her power, that she'd almost given up hope anyone would come." "I wish I'd had more time with her," Lyra said. "She gave you what mattered. Everything else was just details." Senna placed a hand on Lyra's shoulder. "She died believing the world could change. That's more than most of us get." One by one, the survivors placed stones on the grave. An old tradition. Each stone a promise, to remember, to carry forward, to not let the sacrifice be wasted. When it was Lyra's turn, she knelt and pressed her palm to the earth, letting violet light pulse through the ground. Not grief, gratitude. "I'll make it work," she whispered, "whatever it takes." Behind her, she heard footsteps. Darian approached, surprisingly alone, and stood at a respectful distance from the grave. "The last judgment before you," he said. "I met her once, 30 years ago, before my father died. She came to the capital, tried to petition for reforms. My father had her arrested and beaten. I watched it happen and did nothing." Lyra looked up at him. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I want you to understand what you're fighting against. It's not just corrupt alphas or brutal systems. It's inertia, the weight of centuries, the comfortable lie that this is how it has to be." Darian's gray eyes were distant. Thera tried to change things through dialogue, through reason. It got her nothing but scars. "You've already accomplished more in 3 weeks than she did in 200 years. Know why? Because I fought? Because you won." He turned to face her fully. She was right about everything. The system was broken. The hierarchy was diseased. The strong were preying on the weak. But she couldn't beat it because she couldn't beat us. You did, and that changes everything. Lyra stood, brushing dirt from her knees. "So what happens now?" "Now comes the hard part." Darian gestured toward the territories spread below them. "You've got a third of the assembly willing to try your new system. Another third waiting to see if it fails so they can say, 'I told you so.' And the final third actively working to sabotage it." He looked at her. 6 months to prove this works. If you can't, we go back to the old ways, and every wolf who supported you becomes a target." "No pressure. None at all." His smile was sharp. "Which is why I'm assigning you a territory." Lyra's head snapped up. "What?" "You can't rebuild the system from theory. You need a test case, a proving ground." Darian pulled out a rolled map, spreading it on a nearby boulder. "Blackwood Pack." The name hit Lyra like ice water. Her pack. The place where she'd scrubbed floors and been invisible for 21 years. "Alpha Cormac is retiring," Darian continued, forcibly. "His complicity with the cleansers has been documented. The pack needs new leadership." He looked at her. "I'm offering it to you." "You're insane." "Possibly. But think about it. Blackwood is small enough to be manageable, but large enough to matter. It's remote, which means less interference from other packs. And it's where you came from, full circle, poetic justice, whatever you want to call it." Darian's expression turned serious. More importantly, it's a disaster. Cormac ran it like a dictatorship. The Omegas are terrorized, the Betas are corrupt, and the Alphas are too busy fighting each other to actually lead. If you can fix Blackwood, you can fix anything. Lyra stared at the map, her mind racing. Go back to the place that had broken her. The compound where Mira had stepped on her hand, where she'd been whipped for trying to escape, where she'd been nothing. I'm not an Alpha, she said finally. No, you're a judgment wolf. That's better. Darian rolled up the map. You're not replacing the hierarchy with yourself on top. You're dismantling it and building something new. Show them how. And if I fail, then we all fail. But at least we'll have tried. He handed her the map. You've got 1 week to decide. After that, I'm assigning Blackwood to whoever will take it, and you'll have lost your best chance at proving this works. He walked away, leaving Lyra alone on the hillside with Thera's grave and a decision that would define everything that came next. She found Ronan back at the estate, in the library, surrounded by books on pack governance and territorial law. His leg was healing better now. He could walk without the crutch, though he still favored it when he was tired. Darian offered me Blackwood, Lyra said without preamble. Ronan looked up from his reading. Of course he did. You knew? I suggested it, actually. At her shocked expression, he shrugged. You need a territory to implement your reforms. Blackwood makes sense strategically. Plus, there's symbolic value in the Omega they discarded coming back as their leader. I'm not their leader. I don't want to be anyone's leader. Then what do you want? Ronan closed the book, giving her his full attention. Because from where I'm sitting, you've got a choice. You can walk away, let someone else take Blackwood, and hope they implement your vision correctly. Or you can do it yourself and make sure it's done right. They'll hate me. Blackwood Pack. They'll see me as the king's puppet, or worse, someone who got ideas above her station. Some will. Others will see you as someone who survived, who fought back, who proved the system was wrong. Ronan stood, crossing to her. You're scared. That's smart. But don't let fear make your decisions. What would you do? I'd go back. I'd face everyone who said I was worthless and prove them wrong to their faces. His amber eyes were steady. But I'm not you. You have to decide what you can live with. Lyra walked to the window, looking out at the mountains. In the distance, she could see smoke from Blackwood territory. Cooking fires, forges, life continuing as it always had. 21 years she'd lived there, 21 years of being invisible. But she wasn't invisible anymore. If I do this, Lyra said slowly, I need help. I can't rebuild an entire pack structure alone. You won't be alone. The survivors will come. They're looking for purpose, for a way to honor what the remnant stood for. Senna's already volunteered. Ronan moved to stand beside her. And I'm coming too. Obviously. You hate pack politics. I hate corrupt pack politics. This might actually be interesting. He smiled slightly. Besides, someone needs to keep you from accidentally starting a civil war. Despite everything, Lyra laughed. Is that likely? With your track record? Absolutely. She thought about the girl she'd been. Broken, worthless, invisible. That girl would never have imagined standing here, contemplating leading the pack that had crushed her. That girl would have run. But that girl was gone. 1 week, Lyra said. I need 1 week to plan this properly. Then we'd better get started. The trip back to Blackwood took 2 days. Lyra traveled with an entourage that would have been unthinkable 3 weeks ago. Ronan, Senna, 4 other remnant survivors, and a squad of Darian's elite guard. The king had insisted on the guards, claiming they were for protection. Lyra suspected they were also witnesses, insurance that whatever happened next would be documented. They approached the compound at midday. The gates were open. No one was expecting an attack, and Lyra walked through them for the first time in weeks, feeling like a stranger. The compound looked smaller than she remembered, dirtier. The buildings were the same rough stone and timber, but now she could see the rot in the wood, the cracks in the foundations. Blackwood Pack had always been barely holding together. She'd just been too close to notice. Wolves gathered as word spread, a crowd forming in the main courtyard, drawn by curiosity and fear. Lyra recognized faces. There was Mira, the beta who'd made her life hell. Elder Greta, who'd looked at her with perpetual disgust. warriors who'd dragged her back when she'd tried to run. And there, emerging from the main hall, was Alpha Cormac. He looked older than Lyra remembered, his face haggard, his eyes desperate. "Lyra Voss," he said, his voice carrying across the courtyard. "You return." "I return," Lyra agreed. She didn't shift, didn't let her power flare. Not yet. "Alpha Cormac, your tenure is over." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Cormac's jaw clenched. "On whose authority?" "The Assembly's. Your complicity with the cleansers has been documented and judged. You're being removed from power." Lyra pulled out the official decree Darian had given her. "By order of the Alpha King and the Grand Assembly, Blackwood Pack is hereby under new governance." "And I suppose you're the new Alpha?" Cormac's laugh was bitter. "A wolfless Omega who ran away. The Pack will never accept you." "Good thing I'm not asking them to." Lyra handed the decree to one of Darian's guards, then turned to address the assembled pack. "I'm not here to be your Alpha. I'm here to dismantle the system that made Alphas necessary in the first place." That got their attention. Confused stares, hostile mutters, but they were listening. "For 21 years I lived here," Lyra continued. "I scrubbed your floors, cooked your food, served your warriors. I was beaten, starved, dismissed as broken. Not because I did anything wrong, but because the hierarchy said I was worthless." She met Mira's eyes, saw the beta flinch. "That system is over. Not just here, but everywhere. We're building something new." "What gives you the right?" someone shouted. "This." Lyra let the shift take her, violet light blazing through her white fur. The crowd backed up instinctively, fear and awe mixing on their faces. "I'm a judgment wolf. I exist to check corrupt power, and Blackwood's power has been corrupt for too long." She shifted back, standing naked in the courtyard for a moment before Senna handed her clothes. Let them see her scars, her strength, her refusal to be ashamed. "Here's what's going to happen," Lyra said, dressing quickly. "Over the next 6 months, we're going to restructure how this pack operates. Omegas will have rights and voices. Alphas will be accountable to the pack, not just to their own power. Resources will be shared, not hoarded, and anyone who doesn't like it can leave. No one's forcing you to stay." "And if we fight you?" Cormac demanded. Lyra looked at him, really looked at the man who'd ordered her whipped, who'd treated her like property, who'd ruled through fear for 30 years. "Then I'll do what I've done to everyone else who stood in my way," she said quietly. "I'll win." The silence that followed was absolute. Then, incredibly, someone started laughing. One of the Omegas, a woman named Kira, who'd worked alongside Lyra in the kitchens. Her laughter was half hysterical, disbelieving, but genuine. "She actually did it," Kira said, looking at Lyra like she was seeing her for the first time. "The invisible girl came back and told the Alpha to step down. This is insane." "Completely insane," another Omega agreed. And they were smiling. Not all of them. Some looked terrified, some hostile. But enough. "I'll stay," Kira said, stepping forward. "Whatever you're building, I want to be part of it." Others joined her. Not many, maybe 15 wolves out of 80, but it was a start. The rest held back, waiting to see which way the wind blew. Cormac watched his pack fracture around him, his expression turning from rage to resignation. "You've won," he said finally. "Take your broken pack and see how long it lasts without structure." "We'll find out," Lyra gestured to Darian's guards. "Escort him to his quarters. He's confined there pending formal charges." As Cormac was led away, Lyra turned to the assembled wolves, her pack now, for better or worse. "We start tomorrow," she said. "Anyone who wants to help, meet in the Great Hall at dawn. Anyone who wants to leave, you have until sunset to pack. And anyone who wants to fight." She let violet light pulse through her veins. "I'll be here." The next 6 months were the hardest of Lyra's life. Harder than surviving abuse, harder than fighting the king, harder than any battle she'd faced. Because this wasn't about violence. This was about patience. She started by dismantling the Omega barracks, cramped, cold buildings where the lowest-ranked wolves had been housed like animals. With Ronan's help, she redistributed space, giving Omegas the same quality housing as everyone else. The betas protested. Lyra ignored them. She reformed the food distribution system, which had always favored warriors and alphas. Now everyone ate the same rations, first come, first served. 3 senior warriors quit in protest. Lyra let them go. She established a council, not alphas ruling by decree, but representatives from every rank, including omegas who'd never had voices before. The first meetings were disasters, people shouting over each other, old grudges surfacing, but slowly, painfully, they learned to listen. Not everyone adapted. Mira tried to undermine Lyra at every turn, spreading rumors, organizing resistance. Lyra confronted her publicly, forced her to explain why she'd spent years tormenting omegas. Mira had no answer. She left the pack 2 weeks later. Elder Greta stayed but made her disapproval clear. Lyra put her in charge of education, teaching pups about the new system, about rights and responsibilities. Greta grumbled, but did the work. Maybe she'd come around eventually. Maybe she wouldn't. Lyra could live with that. The real progress came in small moments. Kira laughing freely at a council meeting. A former warrior admitting he'd been wrong about omegas. A pup asking Lyra questions about being judgment, not with fear but curiosity. 3 months in, Senna pulled Lyra aside after a particularly exhausting council session. "It's working," she said simply. Lyra looked at her, exhausted. "It doesn't feel like it's working." "That's because you're in it. Step back. Look at what we've built." Senna gestured at the compound. 3 months ago, omegas couldn't speak in council. Now they're proposing policies. Warriors who used to terrorize the weak are learning to protect instead. It's messy and slow and imperfect, but it's real change. It's not enough. It's never enough. That's not the point. Senna smiled. The point is we're trying, and that's more than this pack has done in a century. 5 months in, delegations from other packs started arriving. Some were hostile, looking for proof that the reforms were failing. Others were genuinely curious, wanting to see if it could work in their territories too. Lyra gave them tours, answered their questions, didn't hide the problems. Yes, some wolves had left. Yes, there was still resistance. Yes, it was harder than the old way. But it was also better. The old system was efficient, Ronan told one visiting alpha. Efficient at concentrating power and grinding the weak into dust. This system is messier, slower, more complicated. It's also more just. You have to decide which matters more. Some alphas left convinced, others left skeptical, but they all left talking, and that was progress. 6 months to the day after taking control of Blackwood, Lyra stood in the compound's courtyard and looked at what they'd built. The barracks were gone, replaced by proper housing. The council met 3 times a week, voices from every rank represented. The warriors still trained, but now they also helped with construction, food preparation, pup care. The divisions that had once been absolute were blurring. It wasn't perfect. There were still problems, old prejudices, power struggles, wolves who resented the changes. But for the first time in the pack's history, those problems were being addressed openly instead of buried under hierarchy. "You ready?" Ronan asked, appearing at her side. "For what?" "The assembly. It reconvenes tomorrow. Time to show them what you've accomplished." Lyra's stomach clenched. Tomorrow, every alpha in the territories would vote on whether to implement the reform system-wide. If they voted yes, everything could change. If they voted no, Blackwood would become an isolated experiment, and eventually, the old system would grind them down. "What if they say no?" she asked quietly. "Then we keep going anyway. Show them we don't need their permission." Ronan squeezed her shoulder. "But they won't say no. They've seen the results. Other packs are already adopting pieces of your model. The momentum's building." "Or the resistance is." "That too, but since when have you let resistance stop you?" The assembly met in the same ancient hall, but the atmosphere was different. Less hostile, more evaluative. The alphas weren't here to judge Lyra anymore. They were here to judge her results. Garrett called the session to order, his expression neutral. 6 months ago, we voted to trial new governance structures. Today, we review those trials and decide whether to implement them territory-wide. Alpha Lyra Voss of Blackwood, present your findings. Lyra stood, every eye in the hall on her. She'd prepared a speech, statistics, testimonials, carefully crafted arguments. But standing here looking at these wolves who held the future in their hands, the speech felt hollow. So she told them the truth instead. 6 months ago, I took control of a broken pack, Lyra said. A place where omegas were property, where strength was the only currency, where the weak suffered, and the strong pretended not to notice. I told you we could build something better. You gave me 6 months to prove it. She pulled out reports, handed them to the assembly scribes. These are the numbers. Crime is down 40%. Food security is up 30%. Migration into the pack has increased. Wolves are choosing to join us because they've heard we treat everyone fairly. Our warriors are better trained because they're not spending half their energy terrorizing omegas. Our pups are healthier, our elders are cared for, and our council actually functions. Murmurs rippled through the hall, some approving, some skeptical. But numbers don't tell the whole story, Lyra continued. So I brought witnesses, wolves who've lived the change. Let them tell you what the new system really means. One by one, members of Blackwood Pack testified. Kira talked about having a voice for the first time. A former warrior described learning that protecting the weak was more honorable than dominating them. A pup explained that she wasn't afraid anymore, that adults actually listened when she spoke. The assembly listened in silence. When the last witness finished, Garrett stood. We've heard testimony from one pack. But this assembly represents 37 territories. We need broader perspective. He looked around the hall. Have other packs attempted similar reforms? And if so, what were the results? 3 alphas stood, then 5, then 10. One by one, they described their own experiments, councils with omega representation, merit-based advancement, shared resources. Some had succeeded spectacularly, others had struggled, but all of them reported the same thing. Their packs were stronger, not weaker, more unified, not divided. The question before us, Garrett said, is whether to mandate these reforms territory-wide or leave them optional for individual packs. I call for a vote. The deliberation took hours. Alphas argued, debated, politicked. Lyra stood through all of it, her legs aching, her mind racing. Everything came down to this moment. Finally, Garrett called for the count. 23 alphas voted in favor of mandatory reforms. 12 voted against. 2 abstained. The motion carries, Garrett announced. Effective immediately, all territories will implement governance councils with representation from all ranks. Omega rights will be codified and enforced. Alpha power will be checked by judgment protocols. The age of hierarchy is over. The age of balance begins. The hall erupted, some wolves cheering, others protesting, everyone reacting. Lyra stood frozen, barely able to process what had just happened. They'd won. Actually won. Darian appeared beside her, his expression unreadable. Well done. You voted for it, Lyra said, still stunned. You're the Alpha King. Why would you vote to limit your own power? Because I'm tired, he said simply. Tired of being the villain. Tired of the system requiring villains to function. He looked at her. You showed me there's another way. I'd rather be part of that than continue perpetuating this. What will you do now? Lead, probably. Just differently. Darian smiled, and for once it reached his eyes. Someone has to help implement these reforms across 37 territories. Might as well be me. I know where all the bodies are buried. He walked away, already organizing, already planning. Lyra watched him go and felt something like hope. The territories didn't transform overnight. Change never happened that fast. There was resistance, pushback, wolves who clung to the old ways. Some packs adapted quickly. Others fought every reform. But slowly, incrementally, the world began to shift. Omegas spoke in councils and were heard. Warriors learned that strength meant protection, not domination. Alphas discovered that accountability made them better leaders, not weaker ones. And across the territories, wolves who'd spent their lives invisible began to be seen. A year after the assembly vote, Lyra stood on the same hillside where they'd buried Thera. The grave was covered in stones now, hundreds of them, placed by wolves from every territory who wanted to honor the last judgment before Lyra. Ronan stood beside her, his injuries long since healed. He'd officially taken a position as her chief advisor, though everyone knew he was more than that. Partner. Friend. The person who'd believed in her when she was still learning to believe in herself. You did it, he said quietly. Changed the world. We did it, Lyra corrected. All of us. Thera, the remnant, you, every wolf who chose to try something different. Fair point, Ronan smiled. So what now? You've dismantled a 200-year-old hierarchy, implemented reforms across 37 territories, and proved that the impossible was just improbable. What's next? Lyra thought about that. A year ago, she'd been scrubbing floors in Blackwood, invisible and broken. 6 months ago, she'd been fighting for her life against the cleansers. 3 months ago, she'd been desperately trying to prove the reforms could work. Now? Now she was just trying to live in the world they'd built. I think, Lyra said slowly, I'd like to go home, back to Blackwood. There's still work to do there, still wolves who need help. And honestly, I'm tired of being symbolic. I want to be useful. You are useful. You know what I mean. She looked at him. I don't want to be the judgment wolf who changed everything. I just want to be Lyra. Is that allowed? I think you've earned it. Ronan took her hand. Besides, Blackwood needs you. Senna's doing great work, but the pups keep asking when you're coming back. Something about teaching them to fight dirty. Lyra laughed. I told them one story about fighting the king. One story was enough. You're their hero now. I'm nobody's hero. I just refuse to quit. That's what makes you a hero. Ronan pulled her close. Come on, let's go home. We've got a pack to run and a world to keep fixing. They walked down the hillside together, leaving Thera's grave behind, but carrying her legacy forward. The sun was setting, painting the territories in shades of gold and violet. In the distance, Lyra could see smoke from a dozen different packs, wolves living, working, building futures that would have been impossible a year ago. She'd been nothing once. Broken, worthless, invisible. Now she was Lyra Voss. Judgment Wolf, Alpha of Blackwood. The girl who'd looked at an unbeatable system and refused to accept it. The girl who'd changed the world by refusing to be broken. And as she walked home with Ronan beside her, the violet light pulsing steady beneath her skin, Lyra realized something important. She wasn't invisible anymore. She never would be again. And that, more than any victory or reform or legendary battle, was the real revolution. The revolution of one Omega who'd decided she was worth seeing and made the whole world look. Months later, a young Omega from a distant territory arrived at Blackwood's gates. She was thin, scared, covered in bruises, the kind of broken Lyra recognized intimately. I heard, the girl whispered when Lyra met her. I heard there's a place where Omegas can be safe, where being weak doesn't mean being worthless. Is it true? Lyra looked at her, at this reflection of who she'd been, at this girl who'd traveled hundreds of miles on nothing but hope. It's true, Lyra said. Come inside. You're safe now. The girl cried. Lyra held her, remembering every Omega who'd been told they were nothing, every wolf who'd been ground down by a system that valued power over people. What's your name? Lyra asked. Anya. Welcome home, Anya. We've been waiting for you. And as she led the girl inside into the warmth and safety of Blackwood Pack, Lyra understood that this was the real work. Not grand gestures or legendary battles, just showing up, day after day, for every wolf who needed to know they weren't broken. The hierarchy was dismantled, the reforms were implemented, the judgment protocols were restored. But the revolution? The revolution was in every small moment like this, every Omega who found their voice, every warrior who chose protection over domination, every wolf who looked at the new system and decided to make it work. Lyra Voss had changed the world. Now she was going to help it stay changed, one wolf at a time.